Chapter 387, The Battle of Winterhold. 4. Hour of the Deaf. The phenomenon known as the unmusic was something so dreadful that it became a nightmare for every enemy of Winterhold since this day. The Deaf Battle, the Day of the Unmusic, the unrecorded, too many names to describe an artificial event equivalent to a natural disaster. How exactly does it work? No one knew. Actually, no one could know. The area of the unmusic was a cursed place that would snare all the colors in the world. John may laugh it off and call it the lag, but he knew the truth. He was the architect of that forbidden magic after all. The music is everything in the world. The heart of the world, which is the heart of Lorcan, is also called the heart of music. Music means existence in this world. This music is created by everything that happens and gets recorded in the Elder Scrolls, whose number is uncountable and existence is as non-linear as time in the world of the Elder Scrolls. Manipulating the music of the world with magic is known as the tonal magic. Overdoing it has consequences, and that's what John did. He found a hole in the rules and used the power of the Elder Scroll to erase the music in a certain area, causing no magic or any sort of power to be used. Only weak mortals with thin layers of armor on their bodies walked on the edge of the old knocker's knife. To explain this phenomenon, it is an artificial quasi-dragon break. The dragon break is called the untime, an event where the dragon, aka time, breaks into realities that all happen at the same time, and when it ends, all the realities come true even if some realities opposed each other. Hint: that's how the Dwemer disappeared. Still, this is not the relationship between the untime and the unmusic. The two phenomena share one similarity, and that is the two of them can't be recorded by Elder Scrolls as events out of the world's control. Being out of the Divine's protections, the souls of men shivered as they lost connection with their patron spirits. They didn't know the feeling, but their souls knew it. The Dragon Hunt Alliance soldiers were already between the points of 100 and 200 meters from Neo-Sarthel's first wall. There was no going back by all means. To motivate them forward, Alina ordered the bombardment. "Open fire!" Her voice somehow moved through the soundless zone unheard, yet it reached the ears of the other people of the Alliance on the other side of the area. Expecting to see some sort of great fire, the heart-sunk faces of the Alliance commanders jumped of its places when they saw the scene next to appear. Beams of blue energy came out of the barrel-shaped objects fixed on the second walls. Those beams traveled in an instant and landed on the bodies of the soldiers and the ground near them, causing a terrifying scene to unfold. As each beam landed, it disappeared and cluster eruption accompanied by a shock wave occurred in where it landed. The effect was soul-crushing. None of the soldiers that were hit with the beams survived. Broken limbs, blood mess, fragments of bones and iron. It was not a battle, it was destruction. The battle didn't even start and 1,000 died in less than a minute. That was how grim it was. The soldiers ran around like rats and hid where they could hide. Those on the ground withered in agony, and those who could run hid behind rocks and covered areas. It worked. Cannon fire was effective on tight groups and not on wide loose formations. Those who could take cover, crawl prone on the ground, run out of sight or blend with surrounding were safe for a moment. Still, they were way too close to death and literally playing on its palm. The cannon shots were descending on every corner on the land. The snow that settled on the land for years was jumping up with fierce eruptions that most likely was accompanied by someone's death. It was as if a gate from oblivion opened wide on Nirn. Neo-Sarthel's Magicka cannons didn't stop until 5 minutes of constant bombardment emptied the charges of the Magicka reactors in these cannons. They needed at least a day to recharge, or a change or reactors. From the point of view from the second wall of Sarthel, where the cannons are positioned, the rocky plain of snow in front of the first wall was completely covered with a cloud of fine snow. Nothing could be seen until a couple of minutes later when it all settled down again. The image unfolding was hellish. The Dare troopers kept looking in frigid hearts at what happened to the enemies. walking silhouettes, staggering figures, one's kneeling and wailing soundlessly to the skies, one's lying broken, one's barely mustering the courage to look around them and beyond their covers at Sarthal. From the 5000 Alliance soldiers that started the siege, half of them perished under the Magicka cannon fire. Stillness and silence overtook the air both in the inside and the outside of the soundless zone. All just waiting to see what happens next. Whose turn was it again? None could tell. Should the dare troopers on the wall start hunting the enemies with their crossbows? None could know. What now? Jonrad looked at Alina and wanted to say something, but Hilda glared at him not to utter a word. Even Nurina was having an inner conflict with herself. In her entire life, her first student was John and her second was Alina. She enjoyed teaching the two prodigies quite a lot, but her teachings led to such death and destruction. War was never like that in her head. It was about skill and tactic, yet now, things were rather depressing. She kept her magic up to detect any change of energies around so that she can protect Alina and also tell John's location. At that moment, she felt a strong heartbeat-like pulse from John's direction and her eyes widened. All her depressing thoughts went away. Those who would want to harm her son would all go to hell, as far as she could care whether it is 1,000 or 100,000. She felt ashamed, feeling sorry or responsible just a second ago. Hilda was already hell-bent on murdering that whole army just for John's sake. Such a counter was sudden and shocking, but it brought joy to her heart. Alina was narrowing her eyes as she kept looking at the future. Many possibilities could happen in the next moment. She kept looking at a certain boy across the battlefield right next to Orga Stormfist, and kept saying, "Do it, do it." It was the butterfly effect she needed to start the next phase. That boy was looking at someone in the middle of the battlefield with sorrowful eyes, a brother if Alina could guess right. That brother seemed to have lost his legs, and was looking back at his brother with tears flowing from his eyes. Do it. What are you waiting for? In her future vision, the brother on the ground will bleed out and die, leaving his brother to kneel on the ground and cry, but that wasn't what she wanted. She wanted a different scenario to unfold. Pressure, shock, mayhem. She wanted chaos in the enemy lines. There were only 10 seconds for her the butterfly effect to expire. She jumped off her place and ran to the nearest Magicka cannon, pushing the trooper on it away, and aimed the cannon to position, charging it with her own Magicka. "Alina, what are you?" "Just one more." As she said so, the Magicka cannon started to glow and the shot was unleashed. Strong gasps escaped from everyone as the recoil of the cannon hit Alina's body, and she flew back to the crash in the battlements. "Lady! Alina!" The troopers ran to her, and so did her relatives on the gatehouse. A thin line of blood appeared on Alina's body as she staggered up and ran towards the front, with everyone trying to support her. Yes, it happened. Now, do it. Ha ha. A crazy laugh escaped her as she saw the present unfold to the future she sought. On Orga's front, she was frigid still from the sight of the bombardment, and barely looked forward at the sorry sight of her men. Beside her, the leaders of the other clans were in a sorry sight themselves. Such a tyranny was something unprecedented in the world of those people. As they sank into dread, a sudden eruption in the snow not far away from them woke them all up. They looked forward to see where it landed, but no one could point out the odd about this eruption other than it came a bit later than the other ones. Not until... "Brother!" a boy shouted with all the pain and dread in the world, then charged forward towards the soundless zone. "Harmy!" Orga shouted at her bodyguard that left his position and charged forward like loose an arrow. Her hand barely hung out as she jumped off her frightened horse. She wanted to stop her friend, but he has already run deep in the soundless zone. He could never hear her. But that wasn't all there is to it. Something unexpected happened. The sudden charge of Harmy caused the lines of the Dragon Hunt Alliance to fall restless. These people were all from the clans of Skyrim, and when a clan goes to war, brothers and parents fight shoulder to shoulder with their siblings and children. Just how many son, brother or father were in the first half of the army, the half whose half is lying on the ground struggling between life and death? A lot. Too many. That last shot took the life of a brother in front of his brother and the latter ran forward. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, or in Alina's vision, the first action that will move the rest of the army. Murderers! Save our brothers! Kill those bastards! The sudden change brought all the chaos in the world, not only to the soldiers but to the clan heads. Orga saw Alina run to the side just a few seconds ago, but to think that she... Impossible! That Ice Queen staring on top of the wall was now grinning madly as she looked at the enemy falling in chaos. We can't sit around anymore. Forward! The Ironblood clan head had a lot of men in the field. There was no way he can control his men anymore while they saw their brothers dying. The horses will be of no use. Put the ladders on them and just run forward. The Farwinter clan head was in the same position. Gradually, all the clans started to fall to the chaos. Wait, you can't, Orga shouted to the clan heads. Shut up, girl. This is no longer a fight. Loose formations. Never form groups. The Neeker clan head shouted at her and kept giving orders for the rescue. We can't go in without a plan. Another clan head spoke. We need to take them, then charge forward, or they will kill us all with their magic. We can only take cover behind the first wall. They don't shoot that magic from the first wall, and they can shoot at its base. We need all the shields and the ladders with us. It is all or nothing. The plan went loose, and the fight was no longer for raiding. It was vengeance, survival, and a must. Every clan realized what does it mean if those weapons were taken out to offense rather than defense. It would be the end of the fucking world. An unforeseen charge occurred from the Wind Wolf clan, who was on the far north all by their own, and every other clan started to follow one by one. The true number behind Orga was barely 300 men. She did well keeping her family forces of 2,000 spread around the other fronts, but that was already very exposed. Milady, an officer of hers spoke up. No. The Stormfist Brigade is all that our clan has left. We need to do something different. Orga looked right and left, then pointed out. That mountain valley south to Winterhold, if we go there, we will break from beside the Shrine of Azura and reunite with our men from the raiding teams. If we took over the Dunmare mining village on the other side of the mountain, we will be able to negotiate with that woman. Now. The sudden change of plans meant a lot to the future. Whether to live and die today meant nothing compared to the fate of tomorrow. The attackers were now struggling on the defense. Chapter 388, The Battle of Winterhold, 5. Hour of the Wall Fall. Orga's men started preparing. Before she rides in the Soundless Zone, she looked to the elves who didn't move 1 inch. Elf, what's your move? She shouted at the elf who cussed at her from a while ago. He looked at her with a stiff face, then pointed at the Soundless Zone. You Nords can send each other all to oblivion. This is a suicide. Humph. Cowards. Orga snorted at the face of 2000 high elf and 9 arch wizards included, yet none said a word to her. Walking in the Soundless Zone? No elf was born to do such a daring act. Elves are all about magic, and in a world of no magic, there was simply no hope for the Merkind. Those burly Nords may not find it as crazy as the elves who were shocked senseless. As Orga rode in the Soundless Zone in front of her men, she diverted the route to the southeast away from the fight. Still, the feeling of losing all the ability to hear sound was maddening. She knew that the only way out of this hell is through it. If she dared to run backward, she can pretty much see that hell arriving at the doorsteps of her clan. The only group left was the Thalmor. 9 arch-wizards stood in front of the Soundless Zone with deep thoughts and frowns on their faces. Oriel's mercy! What sort of blasphemy did these humans create this time? I can't even begin to comprehend. If it an illusion magic that blocks the sound waves, then it is a petty trick, but that the sound waves are passing through the place yet carrying no sound. No, they are carrying all the sound, yet they don't in a certain area. This is no normal magic. A magic that can dispel other magic in a certain area is understandable, but that block not the magic but the very possibility of it. It is dreadfully genius and geniusly dreadful. We made a huge mistake. The Nords are indeed nothing special, but the cursed child has grown. He is 18 years old by now, and all we thought of the possibility of him gaining something other than the Elder Scrolls that transcends sense. Those magic weapons, that soundless zone, this may only be the beginning of something very ominous. Yes, we were only distracted by that red-eyed girl. Damn, that was a good trick. There is more beyond these walls. We need to focus now, brothers and sisters. Look closely, these magic weapons are not in the soundless zone, so we heard their sound from here. They fire from outside the zone, and their effect remains, which means magic can affect the inside of the zone, but can't be used from inside. Just what in the name of Magnus did they do? I don't get the principle. It is like adding more limits to the limits of the Mundus set by Doomdrum. It is beyond what we expected. More limits, like panning the spiritual realm and the immortal energy? How can a vicious thing happen? It is as if those souls of the dead won't find its way back to their spiritual reside. What do the Nords call it nowadays? Svelbark, Svendark? Sovngarde. Yes, that. Those who die in such a place won't go to that Sovngarde even if they died as valiantly as it is required. They are beyond the perception of Aetherius. This is madness. But the point is that we now should experiment fast. The 9 arch-wizards kept discussing the possibilities and casting magic at the soundless zone. As they expected, the zone was beyond the perception of Aetherius, the immortal plane, which is the source of magica. That alone meant a lot to elves whose spiritual beliefs are all about the connection between them and Aetherius, the land that was promised in their faith, and what they seek to reclaim by breaking from the prison of Lorcan, Mundus. To them, this was adding another prison on the prison, a sort of heresy, infidelity, and blasphemy that is by no means acceptable. If it was the young mages and soldiers behind them, then those kids would have turned into berserking fanatics and went to kill everyone in Winterhold with boiling blood, but the old arch-wizards were more collective and shrewd. They withstood years upon years of kneeling to the Septim Empire of men, and they kept their cool. They knew that in front of such tyranny, they were powerless even with their years of wisdom and knowledge. They had to tread carefully and uproot the dangerous humans before the situation escalates. The question is, can we cast a spell at a target 800 meters away and land a decisive hit? An arch-wizard asked. None could answer such a question. It is possible to reach this far, but the magic will gradually lose its power as it travels. Those magica weapons installed on the walls of Winterhold had a range of 500 meters with a devastating, and that can be called an amazing feat. We can. Another one replied and suggested something. The arch-wizards started to move. Sarthal, which is now a double-walled fort, gave off the impression of being a very fortified place. The second wall was higher, thicker, more fortified and packed with men, unlike the first wall which was packed with normal troopers who stood silently. The non-trooper recruits on the second wall were wondering the whole time about the ones on the front. They withstood the pressure of cannon shots passing from above them without being fazed. Surely, these were the elites from another camp as far as they could tell. Still, many had complaints about the tactic. Double-walled forts are not practical or used throughout history that much, especially when the front wall is very poor compared to the second. One can only imagine what Alina has in store. The attackers from the Dragon Hunt Alliance understood one thing: they are to protect themselves by taking over the first wall. The distance between the two walls was seemingly 15 meters, which provided enough cover from the cannon fire. The primary goal of the attacking horde was to secure their fallen relatives and rescue them before the second round of the cannon fire starts. Many realized that they may be walking into an ambush, as half of the first wave was killed off and mostly the rest was left as a trap, but they didn't know that the cannons have run out of juice when they stopped firing. Their rescue was somewhat successful. They were out of the range of arrows and Sarthal cannons didn't shoot a single time. The Alliance started to regain some momentum with the hope of survival. They couldn't hear each other no matter what, yet the leaders of the clans started to develop some sort of signal as they kept onlookers on each other. The injured were lifted up and the non-injured were given a hand to stand. Some ran after seeking their relatives, and some ran after being rescued, but no one stopped them. Still, the attack force of the Alliance was snapped down from 10,000 to 7,000. If only they could regain the other 5,000 which were spread around by Orga Stormfist. Some of the clan heads supported her plan at first to pincer attack, but now reinforcements were needed. The 3,000 soldiers keeping the Imperial fort in check and the 2,000 soldiers protecting the Wayward Pass were to be called immediately. The brilliant move that the clans performed was adapting to the cannon fire and come up with a loose formation tactic to minimize the losses. They even tied the siege ladders to the horses and let the run forward for the sake of saving weight. Bringing a catapult or a trebuchet was important in a siege, yet the Nords would rather use the Thursdayum to shout down walls and gates. A battering ram would sure have been a good idea, but the charge needed speed and the terrain was not ideal for such tactic. The previous tactic was to shout the wall or blast it with magic, but now the tactic was to race to the wall, hoard it with all the ladders at the same time, then use it as cover. Surely beyond the first wall was the end of the Soundless Zone. The luck of the Dragon Hunt Alliance started to increase. A warm bolt of fire flew above their heads towards the first wall and barely grazed it, causing a slight black mark on its wall. Those who looked back saw the Thalmor mages creating arrays of magic to devastate the wall. The Alliance soldiers were hyped to see magic on their sides and ran forwards faster. Right now, there was a massive blood vengeance between them and the Dare troopers they need to settle. A second bolt of fire tried to attack the wall's gate, but the aim was kinda off and the spell even got intercepted by a lightning spell that came from Winterhold's direction. The interception was very precise and only took a second. The elves frowned as they couldn't point out the caster, but they were clearly not able to challenge the half a mile between them and Sarthal. On Sarthal's walls, Alina was preparing for another thing. They are in range. Give the blue signal and then the red signal. The green signal on my mark, she said as she aimed the skull of corruption on the first wall. Not far from her, the leaders of the clans were arriving down the first wall. They were desperately pointing to the troops and making signals just for the sake of organizing the mess. Their petty struggle seemed what Alina needed exactly. Scap the Old and Hoggy Blackblade, leaders of the Knickers and the Blackblades, ran and took cover in the wall. As their bodies collided with it, they started to finally hear some voices. An inch away from the first wall was out of the Soundless Zone. The attackers started to realize what is happening and ran to the wall like who found water after being stranded in the desert for days. Cries, wails, cusses and curses sounded out from those under the wall to those above. The agony and pain were just unbearable to keep in after finally managing to hear once again. Curse them! Curse those firemains and moonblades to oblivion! Scap the Old was furious as he hit the wall with his staff. His housecarls were desperately covering him with their shields and bodies, expecting some retaliation from the troops above the wall. Don't waste our time. Bring those ladders to the wall. We've got to kill the ones above it before we... Wait. Hoggy Blackblades was shouting to the ones near him but suddenly stopped and asked, why are they not defending? He looked up the wall but his angle wasn't right, so he pointed to one of his men in the back and the latter looked up. At that time, the sky was covered with blue and red lights at the same time and the man's eyes widened. He looked at his patriarch and shook his head with disbelief. Hoggy Blackblade pulled his man to the walls and told him to speak. There is no one above the wall, patriarch. They all disappeared into thin air. That was indeed the case. All the troopers above the wall vanished as if they weren't there, to begin with. On the second wall, Alina was holding the skull of corruption, and waving it at the first wall. All those silent soldiers on the first wall were merely illusions made by her. The real troopers were actually stationed and packed between the first and the second wall. Alina looked down and saw the reaction of those troopers. On their lead was John's housecarl, Trudvar. They started to move some large chains connected to the wall, and many men with sledgehammers started to break some logs jammed in the first wall. Crack crack asterisk craw. The unpleasant sound was heard across Sarthal and traveled to the ones on the other side of the first wall. The land started to shiver for the change that was uncalled for. More to that, the sound started to return to the world. Still, the curses and the wails were all muted. The red signal was for the Tower of Music to cease function. And the blue signal, it was to break the logs and release the chains supporting the first wall. It was all a decoy. There was no first wall, it was just a trap. A big massive trap that none would ever think of. Those ladders fixed on the wall were packed with men trying to climb, but they tilted backward as the wall tilted towards the ones seeking its coverage. Away from the walls, the Thalmor felt the soundless zone disappearing, and were about to cheer, yet they saw what was happening to the wall. Orga Stromfist too, she was taking the mountain road up to the Shrine of Azura when she felt the change, and saw the wall falling. The wall was made of long pillars built by mudstone fixed beside each other, and were mostly hollowed. They were pulled up and pinned by chains and large logs of wood, with the original tilt in the land in front of the original walls of Sarthal, the large pillars hand no other way but to fall towards one direction, crack crack thud. One pillar after the other, the walls descended on the attackers and formed piles upon piles of men and stone. Hilda, Jonrad and Tyr swarmed down from the wall with their housecarls and walked through the open gates. Hilda at the front holding her great Dane axe, Jonrad and Tyr with the blade katana, and Sigurd, who just came down from the tower with his moon saber. At the double boys, those who lived are ours to weed out. Hilda shouted and rallied all the men behind her. On the wall, Alina held the last signal scroll in her hand as she tore it open and sent the final green signal. On the beach north of Neo-Sarthal, Wulfr's men informed him with the signal. "It is our turn," he said. "Finally! Who arrives first wins." Hafthor ran into the cave and strange noises started to come out. "Win what exactly?" Freya asked as she raced him. Wulfr shook his head and looked at Sviti. "You go home with the others, we will finish this." He walked in after Hafthor and Freya in the cave and kept striding until he met Skadi. "Mother! Your loyal steed awaits, boy. Hurry up and don't be picky." "Yes?" He smiled as walked in further. "The big one is mine." "No, it is mine." In there, Hafthor and Freya were fighting over something, yet Wulfr walked swiftly behind them. "Neither of you will take it." Wulfr climbed the large animal that was on the lead of its herd and patted it. The animal was covered with a large armor befitting its size, bearing the insignia of the Dare Dragon Company. The newest and the most exclusive Dare Corp team was about to be sent to battle. The War Mammoth Team. Chapter 389, The Battle of Winterhold, 6. Reinfrocements, the Sea of Ghosts north to Winterhold. 10 longboats broke the waves heading towards Winterhold's shore. The largest one had 2 men of nobility air around them. "I hope we are not late. What happened last time when we met Thane Johnhild Firemane was bad enough for all manner of diplomacy. You better not advise me to change my mind. I'd advise you not to do something as reckless as entering the old holds with only 2,000 men, but if you are going to do something reckless, you better do it right. I'll make sure of that. Just remember, our objective is to stop the clans and break the siege. The current Winterhold is too valuable to let fall in the hands of those idiots." Yes, you needn't remind me." Just land there and stop the fight in the name of. Shore ahead. A watchman up the crow's nest shouted. Finally, some land. This sea mist was going to suffocate me. Listen, we don't need to interfere too much. Thane Johnhild is missing, but he proved too tough to be held down by vampires. The lad's got fate, and that won't make some vampires stop him from achieving it. I was too foolish to let it all come to this. Chaos is upon us, and places like Winterhold would be a safe haven to folk when the time comes. Yes. I'll make sure that the diplomacies are all handled, and whatever Winterhold wants, Winterhold gets. The borders of Winterhold, Eastmarch, the pale, Nightgate village. A company of cavalrymen rode the chilly road south to Winterhold's Mount Anther, taking the way to Wayward Pass. On the lead were the commander and an old local guide. Old man, you sure you can guide us the right to that place? Yes, quit fretting over it. You can't reach Winterhold from the south road now. Fort Castav is locking the way and bandits are everywhere. Your 2000 cavalrymen will need a faster detour, and they're where I know one. Good, Winterhold awaits then. If we manage to break the siege before things are too late, we will gain their friendship and trust. Thane Johnhild Firemane will sure not forget this and keep our relations friendly. You sure talk a lot about that along the way. Of course, Winterhold is a hold of greatness, and all the people ruling it in the past hundreds of years were all lacking. A man like Thane Johnhild can topple the scale of power any time he wanted, yet he chose to remain neutral. I have faith in him, and I also have faith that Winterhold will be a safe place for Nords when the time comes. You are thinking too much. Winterhold is already a safe place with the people in it. You have no idea who those fuckers are dealing with. Oh, you talk like you know it all, old man. Tell me then, why did you offer to guide us to the Wayward Pass? I just heard there are Thalmor beyond those hills, and I wanted is to kill some. I see. No wonder they call you. Halt. Who goes there? A voice stopped the company of men from the mountain road. Are you a Hold Guard? The commander asked. You are not from the Stormfist's band. Wait. Those banners, these are. Capture that man, he's from the clan's alliance. The commander spoke to the men behind him. Damn it. Don't get closer, we are numbered 2,000 guarding the pass. The alliance scout shouted. And so said the rumor. The commander replied. But declaring your number without interrogation means your number is far less. Something must have happened and your force got pulled to the battle, am I right? Shit. The scout turned tail and ran. Ha. As I thought, the people of Fort Castav were not pressured, which means all the stalling forces are being pulled back. Winterhold should have put quite the stand. The commander laughed. Told you so. The guide replied nonchalantly. Fine old man, we've got some Thalmor to kill and a battle to stop. Winterhold's frozen wasteland, Sarthel's front. The fake wall fell on those who tried to seek shelter behind it, killing over 1,000 and injuring many. Now the attackers were open to a dozen of new dangers. Almost 5,000 Dare Trooper, Firemane and Moonblade Guardsmen swarmed on the survivors under the lead of the bloody Hilda. The fierce she-wolf was wielding a Great Dane axe and cutting men in half from the helm down. The debris of the first wall formed a chaotic battlefield that a decent formation can't be formed upon. The axemen and spearmen of Winterhold swarmed over those under the debris, killing and beheading. Never thought I'd see such a chaotic battle since the Red Ring. The fields. Hilda smelled the bloody air. Keep reminding me, you troll, Tyr said dissatisfied as he missed the Red Ring day due to injury. Easy, wife. No need to go full-on bloody just yet. The elves are not advancing. Jonrad stopped Hilda from ingesting herself in battle. Tower of Music. War drums music. Ah, nice one, Alina. Hilda called as she got fired up by the thrilling sensation. Goodness! After the wall fell, the men of the clans were pushed back away from the rubble and tried to regroup in a defensive formation. Of course, others already started escaping. As Hilda and the others charged at the attackers, the situation took a turn to complete chaos, but surely to the side of Winterhold. Spears and axes descended on the men of the clans from all angles and corners. The Dare troopers have accumulated a lot of stress in the days prior to the battle. Their mass-produced Germunbu helms and black shields made an image of horror in the eyes of their enemies as they formed a spear and shield formation form the flanks. The death was lurking from every corner, and despite being not cornered by any wall, the attackers fought and stood their ground despite the heavy losses and the low morale. Reinforcements! Reinforcements are here! As an attacker shouted, others could see the swarming numbers of men coming from the direction of the Wayward Pass. These were the other 5000 that were stationed on the other direction of Winterhold. They came running like a horde of hungry beasts. Ha! They brought down the wall. Look at that, a glorious day, brother. The herald on the lead called for the nearest retreating soldier. Fuck off. You know shit, we are dying here. The sudden reply caused wrinkles to appear on the forehead of the man. While we heard you are victorious and needed reinforcements on your side, the herald questioned. Who said that? Most of the patriarchs died and we are retreating. Run for your lives. The retreating soldier didn't bother and deserted. Hey, the herald sensed that something was wrong. Just an hour ago, news came to reinforce the main force on Sarthal. The messenger even had one of those secret coded messages with him. In truth, that was the doing of Team Zero. A Khajiit spy has infiltrated the Thalmor servants and discovered the secret code of the messaging system between the forces. Alina used that to gather all the Alliance's soldiers at one place. The herald wanted to turn around and inform the coming force with the news as he checked the battle situation with his own eyes, but an oddity happened. Madness. This hold is madness. The man that was deserting just a minute ago came back running to the other directions. The herald looked at what was chasing the man and his eyes almost popped out of their socket. Fucking mammoth. The reinforcements of Winterhold has arrived as well. The War Mammoth team, led by the Council of Cousins and followed by 2000 Dare troopers. 20 adult mammoths are all that it took to form this unit, detected only for destroying armies. Each mammoth was armored lightly like a cataphract horse and carried a large saddle that can take up to 20 lightly geared men with their bows and barrels of arrows. A small walking fortress that can absorb all manners of attacks and destroy anything in its way with its armor enchanted with magic resistance. Open ways for the boys. Hafthor was riding a mammoth on his own with 20 archer on its saddle, and took a sharp turn towards the left flank of the coming reinforcements. Wolfer and the rest took the same action and put all the pressure on the reinforcements. The first shock of the mammoths was unseen due to the uneven land, and their charge was unstoppable. They may have already charged at the left flank, but they have already gone too deep until they obliterated the right flank. Damn it! You should have told me we have that. Hilda was claiming some poor souls under her axe when she saw the charge of the mammoths from afar. Her frustration was vented on another 20 to 30 poor souls. Away from the battle, Orga Stormfirst and the elves were still calculating their odds. The elves were surely going to attack, but that was too chaotic, and they may involve themselves with unwanted trouble, but to the eyes of the arch-wizards, this situation a few measly human pulling tricks on each other. Orga, however, was pale as she saw the coming force being trampled down by the mammoths. There was no room for negotiation with Alina as it seemed. A victory of this scale was just too overwhelming as Winterhold was suffering no losses at all. Thankfully for her side, she didn't lose that many men and her troops were all following only her orders. Hey beautiful, up for a hike? Suddenly and out of nowhere, a voice called for Orga. She looked behind to see a familiar silver-haired face with handsome features and a large sword on his shoulder. For shore's sake, Brahm. How can you be here? Orga recognized Brahm of Johanna. The two of them were fellow mercenaries. Me? I am guarding the boss. Winterhold really pay a lot of money, you see. You should have come and worked with Boss John. He pays better than the Bretons and the Imperials, I tell you. The boss? Orga's eyes narrowed as she looked behind Brom. John Hild Firemane is here. A smile formed on her face. Oh, wait. I see that look on your face. You want to go after the boss? Sounds like the best way to negotiate with that woman from Winterhold. You mean the lady boss? Come on. You made the worst two enemies in your years. Turn around and flee, best action you will ever take. Look, I was hired to protect this road. Your call, if you pass me you'll get killed by John Dare. I think I like the odds. Surely not worse than being stomped down by a damn mammoth. I tell you what's worse than being stomped down by a mammoth. Having a damn Daedric Titan chase you to the demise of your warband. Been there, not good. Move aside, Brom. Sigh. So it begins. The two mercenaries seemed to have a history of rivalry between them. Brom was looking to Orga's scary face with ease as his Daedric band was summoned in the span of a few seconds. 300 Nords against 300 Dremora. As they were about to clash, the mountain shook. The sky darkened and the air thinned. Something was not right. The battle stopped. The Nords and the Elves and the others all looked towards the direction of the beak between Azura's shrine and Mount Anther only to see a beam of light forming between heaven and earth. John was on the move. Chapter 390 The Battle of Winterhold 7 Aetherial Tribulation. Big thanks to @Darius Thomas for the gift. And also @Greenbowie676. From chaos to more chaos. That's how the Battle of Winterhold turned out to be. There were too many fronts now. The first and the largest was at the gates of Winterhold. The attackers that swarmed in were all repelled back, and Alina's plan was to devastate the power of the other dark clans to the extreme, so that she can dismantle them later one by one with ease. The second front was the War Mammoth unit against the new reinforcements coming from the direction of Wayward Pass. Alina's plot was to drag those ones in the back as reinforcements with false news. The entirety of Team Zero was to focus all its resources on that to happen. The War Mammoth unit was completely her idea, and not a thing that John came with. Maybe she drew some inspiration of John's devices, but that idea couldn't be done if Jarl Skald of Dawnstar didn't drive the giants off towards Winterhold. The Firemans negotiated with the giants and reached an arrangement to buy the orphaned mammoth. For a mammoth to be orphaned is for its owner to die. A mammoth and a giant would stick together as partners for their whole lives, and the giant bloodline in the Firemane also had the same quality with the 9 guardian totem beasts rather than mammoth. The orphaned mammoths were a great addition to the Odair Corps, since no clan can reason with the giants as good as the Firemans. Wulfur rode his mammoth and directed it to chase the deserters of the Alliance's army. The reinforcements of the Alliance crushed by half under the feet of the mammoths and got pincered between the defenders of Sarthal and the ones following the War Mammoth unit. Now, everything was working well for Winterhold as it flexed all its military power to the extreme. And now to the third front. At the northern shore of Winterhold, a band of 2000 cavalrymen landed on the snowy shore with haste bearing the red banner of the Wolf, the High King's troop and Skyrim's first army, the Army of Solitude. High King Torrig was personally at the forefront of his force, charging directly towards Sarthal. On his right was his Housecarl Bulgir Bearclaw, his court wizard Sybil Stentor, his Thane Bryling and his steward Falk Firebeard. The ride was moving swiftly to the east, wishing to catch a glimpse of Winterhold before it is too late. Ahoy! Riders coming ahead. One of the scouts on the lead called. Don't tell me, deserters from Winterhold? Torrig was ready for some bad news, but that seemed like the worst. The scout came back as fast as he could. Looks like trouble. They are hostiles. These words weren't assuring which side was this is. The soldiers of any defeated army would turn into monsters pillaging and raiding any travelers on their way for the sake of provisions and loot to escape further. Ready for clash. Torg readied his men to face some resistance, hoping to capture one of those deserters and inquire about Winterhold. A few seconds later, runners appeared on the end of vision with a cloud of fine snow chasing them. The grim appearance on their faces and their screams made the hearts of the men of Solitude sink. Something was clearly wrong. Those who were swallowed by the cloud of fine snow gave off pitiful dying shrieks accompanied by loud stomps. The horses grew restless as it approached, and the runners didn't even bother Winter Solitude's men. To their surprise, the cloud of fine snow stopped in front of them and started to settle. The powerful aura coming from it was surely something unnatural. What the men saw first were large curved tusks bearing scary marks and armed with large blades, each, then a large trunk of a mammoth, then a body of a full-grown one. The mammoth seemed to be in a foul mood, yet it stood its ground and groaned at the riders. It clearly wasn't considering them friendly. Well, well, well. Who do we have here? If it isn't High King Torg himself. A voice called out to the High King from the mammoth's back. The idea was kinda unimaginable, but as soon as the people raised their heads, they saw a large man sitting on top of the mammoth's head. He was holding a large war pike, and looked down at them with cold, murderous eyes. This is Wulfr of Winterhold, Thane Johnhild's right hand. Falk Firebeard was well informed with faces. Greetings. We are amidst a battle, so didn't have the time to prepare a welcome parade. What brings the High King to our humble town? Wulfr's language provoked the king's men greatly. Torg didn't mind Wulfr's hostility and replied, "We are here to aid Winterhold. 2,000 cavalrymen are with me." Wulfr nodded. "John said that we might have some unexpected allies, but I didn't think Solitude would be one. This way." Wulfr turned the mammoth the other way, but his words echoed deep in the king's head. John said, "Wait, you spoke with Thane Johnhild? Is he here?" Torg rode forward right away. "You will see soon enough." The third front, where High King Torg came to reinforce Winterhold, surprised Wulfr, but the bigger surprise was on the king's side. Winterhold was faring much better than he ever expected. Thane Johnhild Firemane may be officially the strongest man in Winterhold, but that only if people ignored the forces supporting him. He had the full backing of the Firemane as their son and the Moonblades as their son-in-law and the college as a great asset. This sure puts a few powerhouses on John's side. King Torg's plan was to stop the bloodshed, but that was already too late, and anyone in the state of Winterhold won't hand over the victory they gained for negotiations. Right now, the best action was to calm down the vigor of Winterhold and get a grasp of how could they repel such an alliance away. A king's first duty, after all, is to balance all the forces to keep the ship afloat. South to King Torg, the fourth front was much more active and bloody. Another unexpected reinforcements of another 2,000 cavalrymen came all the way through the Wayward Pass, chasing the reinforcements of the Alliance, then diverted their direction and met face to face with the Thalmor forces that didn't budge off its place. Those riders were all Nordic raiders carrying the blue banner of the bear under the lead of none other than the most charismatic leader in Skyrim, Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak. Send those elves to oblivion. Skyrim's for the Nords. Sovngarde. Taking advantage of the high ground to empower their charge, the Nord raiders descended on the elves out of nowhere. Nords. Kill them. Filthy humans. Your kind will be eradicated. One had to hand it down for the high elven warriors of Somerset. Each and every one of them was a fierce combatant with many years of experience. Unlike the humans who had the quantity, the high elves had the quality. They coped with the situation right away. Shields, swords and spells were what the elves usually fought with, all in light plate elven armor, giving them the edge over all manners of battlefields. The elves valued their life and always pursued immortality. Their lives were what mattered above all else, so when the Nords wore padded armor and reinforced armor with a little to do with plates, the elves were always fully equipped. The shock charge of Ulfric's Stormcloak was absorbed right away. Still, if there was someone who can deal with the elves on every situation, this man should be none other than Ulfric's Stormcloak. Fuss ro da! Jarl Ulfric shouted the elves in his way, making a large hole in their force, and pushing the charge forward once again, reaching another climax. There was an old guide in cheap armor right behind Ulfric. This man had a katana blade to his side, and kept his eyes narrowed as he checked through the Thalmor force. Once his eyes landed on a robed justiciar, he jumped off his horse and moved at a speed unimaginable to his age, reaching the side of the justiciar in a second, beheading him right away. Elvish dogs. They always die fast. Ulfric's horse stopped beside the man, and Ulfric looked at him, smiling wryly. They die fast because you kill them like that. Seems like age hasn't caught up to your touch at all, Fuldheim the Fearless. Bah! Leave me to my killing, lad, and I'll leave you to yours. Didn't you have some grudge to settle? Fuldheim cussed at Ulfric and moved like a phantom once again. Aye, Ulfric said as he looked deep into the Thalmor camp. There were 11 exceptionally powerful auras behind the force, yet in a certain tent, there were 2. One of them was very familiar to Ulfric. Elenwen, roll over here. Ulfric called for Elenwen with strong resentment. Not long after, a beautiful high elven mature woman appeared from a tent with a slightly mocking smile on her arrogant golden face. Oh, if it isn't dear Ulfric? What can I do for you, old friend? Cut the crap, woman, and bright out your sword or axe or whatever you swing. Ulfric jumped down from his horse and, throwing his spear down, and pulled out his axe. Rickford. Elenwen's face was ever so passive and calm. Miss me already? It wasn't that long since we met last time, if I remember. Still, how is yo? Shut your trap, woman. My oh my, still the young boy I met all those years long ago. Can't get over me yet? Ulfric and Elenwen walked to each other, and the 2 forces took cleared a place for their leaders to duel. Ulfric's Rickford met Elenwen's elven exquisite blade in a strong clash that pushed Elenwen away. Ulfric took a small breath and adjusted his lunges to a humming aura of frigid frost around him. A strong shockwave of power made the normal soldier stumble around him. Elenwen didn't unleash an aura or anything like that. Her magicka inside her boy started to burn, and she cast Empower on herself. High elves always look down on the art of the battle spirit, saying it is alien magic out of their motherland brought by the Akaviri hearsay. They never practiced any aura. The duel between Elenwen and Ulfric was swift and clean. The 2 seemed well aware of the other's skill set and countered the counters of each other. Ulfric waved his axe in rounds, trying to distract Elenwen, who kept a safe distance and locked eyes with Ulfric. As he smirked and waved his axe by the right, his hands pulled a sword by the left. Elenwen merely stepped out of range, but Ulfric's aura chased her, as if the blades had auras of its own. She, however, merely cast a ward to block it cleanly. Ulfric's foot was dug in the snow, and with a kick, the soft snow flew upwards towards Elenwen's face. Her expressions looked natural, but Ulfric could detect her annoyance and urgency. As long as I keep you dogs away from Sarthal, there is no danger on the city, as it seemed. Don't overestimate yourself, my dear. We don't need to march at Winterhold whatsoever. Oh really? You are here hunting those mammoth or something? Heh heh. You seem as surprised as us. Winterhold has no actual power to speak of other than their advanced magical technology. In the face of 10 archwizards, do you think that will mean anything? 10. Come on, dear. You know the drill. Let the Nords kill each other and the rest will be ours to scrap. Isn't that what you people are good at? Ulfric seemed annoyed by the fact. 10 archwizards from the Dominion was something that he failed to foresee. Now there is some real trouble. If it is him alone, he can face 1 arch-wizard all for himself, which is Elenwen. Calculating how many masters in Winterhold, Only few can stop the rest of the 9. It seems that the battle on Sarthel's Gate is almost over too. Look at those Nords riding mammoths like the savages they are. Did they ever think that such petty creatures will stop the power of the arcane? As Elenwen said so, the 9 auras behind her started to move. They all rose in the air like immortals. Ulfric's frown grew uglier. He didn't think that the Thalmor would pull such a large force out. This can be said as 10% of the Thalmor fighting force all gathered in one place if one overlooked the whole Aldmeri dominion. Elenwen, so this reaches nowhere again. Exactly. You won't get your vengeance, so get over it, but as a gesture of benevolence, we won't touch the Jarl of Eastmarch. She flew up in the air with the other arch-wizard. Ulfric was pissed to the max. Such arrogance in front of him was something he expected from his old enemy Elenwen, but to always end like this. How many times he met her in arms and ended up being humiliated or so-called spared by their elven benevolence. He knew what they wanted and knew that they know him too well. They maybe actually created him as the man he is today. Still, he can never help it. His arrogance told him one thing, and that when the time comes, he would crush every plot and plan the elves put in his way no matter what. Yet it always ends like this. He never cornered them or paused as a threat. They always let him to his devices whenever and provoke his pride more. Damn you! Ulfric cussed as he picked a spear from the ground and intended to strike down those arrogantly flying elves looking down on him. But it was then when everything in the world stopped. Not by force but by their will. The sky darkened, the air thinned. The Mundus itself was angry. What is going on? Was on everyone's mind. Not just on Ulfric's front, as he and the arch-wizards of the Thalmor were about to engage in another bloody conflict. It was on the third front where Wulfr was leading High King Torrig towards Sarthel. It was on the second front where the Firemans chased off the Alliance soldiers on the Mammoth. It was on the first front where Alina and the others pushed back the attackers. Alina looked to the south, and her eyes opened wide as a large beam of light formed between heaven and earth. Tink, tink, tink. A loud metallic smites of a hammer started to echo in the region, and somehow the world itself reacted. The Mundus cried hard. It wasn't natural. It was against nature. It was a violation of the rules. A power beyond sense, a force beyond understanding. Alina realized that John's was his own move now. The ones who realized the nature of the change right after Alina were the high elven arch-wizards other than Elenwen, who was of a younger generation. Their expressions grew pale as they could tell what was that. Goodness! The Mundus itself, the binds of the Mundus are shaking. It can't be. How in the world can this happen here? Who has such power? We must stop that. Now. It was a phenomenon the elves sought for through all their races, and few managed to achieve such a height in the olden history. A way not lost but unreachable. That strong beam of energy was nothing other than a power falling from the heavens when something defies the heavenly order. A phenomenon that can echo through the heaven, Aetherius, the earth, Nirn, and the hell, Oblivion. The realm, Mundus, itself has many seals to stop such a phenomenon, but when someone reaches a certain level of power, the Mundus retaliates, for it was created to suppress that by none other than Lorcan himself. Whenever the ethereal tribulations appears, the world topple. Last time it was seen with the Omsavai, Dagath Uar and the Nerevarine. Now it appears in Skyrim. Just what is John up to? The 9 high elves charged towards the beam of light. Alina jumped off the wall. Jonrad, Tyr, Hilda and Sigurd intercepted their way. Tormund and Jenna joined. Nurina teleported to the base of the mountain. The true battle of Winterhold, the battle of the powerhouses, was beginning. Chapter 391, The Battle of Winterhold, 8 and 9. So there was a wedding in the family. Sorry for not informing anyone beforehand. I am going to add multiple chapters to each other so that I can manage the workload and do things faster. Each part will be more than 2K words, so you're getting your chapters. Part 1. As the battle was starting, a single young man climbed the mountain top between Mount Anther and the Shrine of Azura. He was clad in a black, wearing an expressionless face, and observing the morning sky silently. He stopped at the not-so-flat top and checked it out. Nice spot. His calm face was really an opposite to his active, cheerful nature. He carried a hint of calmness that can only be seen in a man about to do something rather dangerous. You sure about this? Shadow's voice echoed in his head. Yes. It is the best course of action. You think things will get better this way? You may be right, I know, but you will open yourself to new dangers and threats that I don't really want you to go through. Don't worry, I have preparations, John said as he turned to the Shrine of Azura's direction, and friends in high places. You trust Azura? You trust her. I am a different story. Trust is not the word I'd pick anyway. I trust that she is true to her desires, and it would be a good distraction until the time comes. You said yourself, after today, everything will change. I wish you luck then. John nodded and looked far to Sarthal. His thoughts varied between his lovers, his family and his accomplishment. All the eggs important to him are all gathered in that one basket. Nefertiti, Odakuro, Zykel. He called for 3 names. The first appeared on his shoulder as a black cat, the second was a large-boned samurai, and the third was a gigantic being with the appearance of an extremely black evil WRM, or rather, a Daedric Titan. Homan. Mas Ter. Mortal. John didn't turn to any one of the 3 and spoke after a long breath. Zykel, fitting in your new body. Yes, mortal. I feel much better compared to last time. I learned how to keep this body flying now. Pathetic. Nefertiti cussed at him. Tisk. Zykel, who became a Daedric Titan, glared at her. She only spoke my mind, John said. Oh, the Daedric Titan started to shrink in a gloomy mood. Listen very well, I want you to go down there and keep yourself hidden between mountains. Your job is to protect the commander of Winterhold's forces, my woman Alina. Consider it done, mortal. Zykel stood up with his Daedric Titan body and started walking down the path. Use your wings, dimwit, John shouted. Oh yes. Zykel stood still for a while before figuring out how to use his wings again. Are you sure about that, idiot, Homan? Nefertiti asked. Despite the fact that the one on the wheel is a dimwit, he has the body of a Daedric Titan. Just like giving a baby the body of a muscular adult. Expect him to smash things too well. Also, it will take him a while to figure out himself after going through that experience. Being reborn is nothing easy. Of course, Homan should know best. Enough with wasting time, let's get to it. John took out 2 items from the cube. They were the Elder Staff, Pride, and Greed. He used Pride to make the atmosphere on the peak a bit foggy and handed it to Nefertiti and also gave her the cube. He then reshaped Greed into an anvil and made Wrath fix it to the ground. The 5 of us, Greed, Wrath, Pride, Nefertiti and I are all connected with Soul. Nefertiti and I by a mystic connection, so I see her as equal while the sins are what I enchanted with parts of my very living soul, so I see them as my extension. The following process is going to cause a large change to the 5 of us, but it will be temporary. Even though I don't need any consent from you all, I want our will to become stronger as parts of me and extensions of my will. John gave a ceremonial speech just to put his heart and mind to it, but the others started to express their opinions. Wrath's eyes started to gleam in red more and more, conveying his fired-up state of mind by a hearty roar. Pride shone in golden glimmer, expressing its high and mighty nature. Greed quivered and shook, ready to take all that John will give him. As long as the change doesn't touch my royal fluff. Nefertiti changed into her child form and said so. Ha ha. That's assuring. John laughed. He then looked at Nefertiti and spoke, "Let's get right with it." She manipulated the cube, and took out an item which was Wraithgord. John put the single Dwemer gauntlet on his right. The next items were both Sunder and the Keening, which went to the right and left hand. John looked at the 3 artifacts that were some of the finest things ever made by the lost race of the dwarves. With a swift move, John smote with Sunder on Greed. Tink! A loud metallic sound echoed through the place. "Damn!" John exclaimed, "looks like Greeda loves it. Pride, increase the power of the fog spell around us, and not let a sound out." The Elder Staff did what John wanted, and made the area completely covered in mist, and blocked all sounds from leaking out. "Nefertiti, when I give the signal, starting passing those things to me." "Okay, whenever you're ready." John closed his eyes and calmed his state of mind for a second, then opened his eyes again, and nodded. "Now." As soon as he said that, Nefertiti took out an item, and put it on the anvil of Greed. Without any more waiting, John smote with Sunder on that item. A cloud of red energy overflowed in the surroundings, and started to make anomalies happen in the space like red lightning cracks forming out of nowhere and strange shapes and wills in the red cloud struggling with each other, and even voices were heard through the red cloud. The item Nefertiti took out was a heartstone, one of those ones that can be mined from Solstheim. Heartstones are pieces of the Red Mountain that carry some residual power from the heart of Lorcan, the world-grade artifact that got the Red Mountain formed around it. Heartstones are merely some earth stained with power from the heart of Lorcan. John knew that for a fact, and he could never break those heartstones to cultivate from them directly. Now with the power of the Sunder, a specific amount of energy entered the stone, trapping the energy and chased the energy of the heart out. John switched from the Sunder to Keening, and passed the blade through that red cloud, causing it to react to the dagger's blade. The energy cloud was flayed by Keening. "Arg!" John groaned as he felt something sweet coming through his throat. The energy of the Heartstone was passed through Keening to Wraithgard, which absorbed the wild effect of the energy and let the pure power flow into John's channels. John could stand no more and fell on his knees with his teeth clenching to each other, about to break from the pain. Nefertiti almost panicked, but she looked at Odakuro, and with her will, it supported John up as she took out a bar of wood and stuck it between John's teeth. "You can't stop now, Homan. If you stop, everything is lost." As she said so, some sense returned back to John, and he struggled to keep himself standing. He looked at her with a pale face. His body was burning up from the outside and freezing from the inside. His soul was in a very active state as it got a large and violent amount of that alien energy that came all at once. He felt he was being torn apart by an invisible hand, but he couldn't say a word. After all, this was all his idea. He had a plan, and he must stick to it to the very end, or everything will truly be all to waste. What he is doing now is not some sort of cultivating, even though it followed the same principle. It was something much more different and way more violent. Nefertiti took out another heart stone, and John looked at it bitterly. He reluctantly smote with the Sunder once again, and flayed the energy with Keening. This time, his whole arm became numb and he could barely move it. With the third heartstone, John couldn't endure his own clothes. He was dressed in some thick winter clothing with a large armored girdle belt. John let out some of that energy out, and the clothes on his body all exploded away, leaving only the armored girdle belt. His damaged body was exposed, half pale, half normal, even though his muscles were still in good shape. He looked like one of them barbarian warriors in that girdle, which had some cloth still hanging to it. Tink, tink, tink. With each smite, John was withering in pain and suffering. It kept going for maybe 2 hours straight as he ground too many heartstone, and his face was carrying some serious hints of tiredness. Just as he was about to stagger and fall once again, he felt a sudden change. The energy he accumulated were too much to be trapped in by one mortal soul. John was about to puke blood from the pain. That pain, however, stopped as he felt a different feeling surrounding him. The world was rejecting to let him gain more energy than what he already gained. Finally! It was what he aimed for all along, the point of violation to the rules of the Mundus. One more step forward only meant that the world will retaliate for sure, no matter if John was one of those paragon breed mortals called the heroes or not. John finally could put on a wide grin as he waved, sunder, at the last heart stone put in front of him. Tink! It was then, the energy John accumulated was too much and too wild. The Mundus had a lot of binds to stop such an event from happening, as it is the way Lorcan and Magnus designed it to be. The sky darkened. The air thinned. The wind stopped. The clouds above the mountaintop formed a typhoon-like circle, and through it, a beam of pure wild energy descended towards John and his soul fragments inhabiting Nefertiti, greed, pride, and wrath. The energy beam broke through the world without touching anything with harm, but that wasn't the situation towards John and his soul fragment. The beam was too fierce and descended on the 5 of them with the intention to stop them from attaining power beyond what is allowed. John watched the shining light fall towards and gritted his teeth. He then raised up his right hand, which had Wraithguard, and met the descending beam of light with his fist. Break! John couldn't let a single strand of his magical energy out as his body and the beam of light clashed. He can't let go of that power as he already came this far. The whole weight of the beam pushed John down on his left knee, yet his arm was still rising. Sunder and Keening also fell on the ground. On the other hand, Nefertiti and the 3 sins were being suppressed by the light too. Nefertiti used her shadow magic to protect herself. Odakuro knelt in front of his master with its katana stabbing to the ground, resisting the suppression of light. The shadow ether was a large amount of dense shadow energy, so it had a good affinity to resist the light, and the elder staff was doing better than others as it was radiating its golden light to fight off the world's suppression. In truth, only 10% of the suppression fell on them and 90% was on John. The heavenly tribulation, or rather the ethereal tribulation, has begun. Part 2. 9 figures dashed through the skies of Winterhold towards the base of the light beam atop the mountaintop, between Mount Anther and the Shrine of Azura. Their intentions were not of pure malice as they came but to stop an imminent disaster. 9 arch-wizards were something equal to the worth of 9 weapons of mass destruction, all focused on one goal. This power, they are arch-wizards! Alina was shocked senseless and turned to Nurina. Curses! I thought they were not that powerful at the very best, but this is too much. Didn't your spies tell anything? Even Nurina's face twisted. We knew there are powerful masters among the enemies, but not arch-wizards. The 2 were worried sick at the moment, but a single distress signal to the other powerful masters on the side of Winterhold was enough for an immediate response. Hilda, Jonrad, Tyr and Sigurd moved away from the first front and dashed towards the mountaintop where John is. Nurina followed, accompanied by Tormund and Jenna Firemane. This match wasn't even good, the strongest 7 on the side of Winterhold against 9 arch-wizards. The College of Winterhold could afford Savos Aran and 3 other arch-wizards, but only in the case of Winterhold being broken into. Alina looked at the situation getting out of her hand and her heart sank. She looked around for any more cards in her sleeves, then noticed the large dwarven ballistas. Angium, use the ballistas. Shoot the elves down. She shouted. Angium, Sveikin and Trudvar, who were leading the first front under Alina, left their units to their seconds in command and manned the ballista on the low towers. They ran like beasts and climbed up the walls with their hands until they reached the war machines. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 ballista bolts were shot with absolute accuracy towards the flying mages. One must be thankful that the levitation spells are not as good as real flying, else the situation would have become much worse by the second. Thankfully, The ballista's range reached the flying mages with ease and caused their formation to break loose. Humph! Insolent humans! An arch-wizard felt offended by Ongium's bolt and decided to incinerate the human by a fire spell. The response came from Alina as she slammed her hand on a certain stone tablet on the wall, and some pillar-like objects rose on the wall. These objects were strange pillars with orbs on top of them. Once the spell got closer to the range, the pillars shout out lightning spells, completely nullifying the flame spell cast by the arch-wizard. This was one of the Tesla Tower functions. As soon as the arch-wizard saw that, a vein grew on his forehead. Insolent dogs! Why don't you just die? The short-tempered arch-wizard couldn't accept the humiliation of his spell being broken, and was about to go on rampage. Stop it! Look, they have caught up to us. One of his colleagues pulled him away. The 9 arch-wizards felt the threat that the 7 masters who were approaching paused and decided to give a fast fight. 7 of us can hold them, the other 2 should eliminate the threat. The masters were preparing to meet each other on one front, and it started to get rather serious. The first front lost the support of the masters, but the Winterhold was already overwhelming the enemies, and sent them on the run as a chase started while a few troopers were left to defend the wall. Alina seemed anxious watching the disadvantage of the 7 versus 9 masters. The 7 masters of Winterhold stood in front of the mountain with their weapons drawn, while the 9 arch-wizards remained in the air. Now! Attack! The 2 sides moved at the same time as powerful spells and waves of magic power formed deformation in reality itself. Space started to crack under the strong exchanges of magicka and the heavenly tribulation that was going on the top of the mountain. Lady Boss, can't we use the tower once again? Trudvar asked. No, the reactor is exhausted and our people are out there. One misstep and we may even harm John. The situation was chaotic, but Alina was already focusing on all the fronts with her future vision. She kept gazing at how the battle was unfolding on the Master's front. The disadvantage was clear. Jonrad was handling a strong fire mage on his own. Haha, I read the reports about you, human. You are the so-called King of Ash. Your flame looks mediocre, if you ask me. If you can run your mouth this much, you at least can show something better than this blind duck spells you are casting. Humph! Die, you fool! I humbly decline. Jonrad was disadvantaged in terms of energy, but had stronger firepower. A race of time to him, and a race of endurance to his opponent. On the other side, there was Tormund and Jenna against 2 arch-wizards. Tormund carried the clan's sword Gram, and his round shield made of ebonwood and behemoth scales, while Jenna carried a long black staff with a spearhead. Those lousy old humans. Think you can face me and my brother when we go as duo? One of the arch-wizards spoke with haughtiness. Oh, husband, it seems those 2 elves are some sort of duo fighters too. Oh, wife, you seem energetic all of a sudden. We indeed haven't faced any duo fighters since a very long time ago. Don't waste your breath on those 2, brother. Just kill. The second arch-wizard cast a fast spell towards Jenna sneakily. The spell landed and made a big clash with some dust rising, but as it settled, Jenna and Tormund appeared to be unharmed as Tormund's shield was covering both of them with ease. Jenna hid behind Tormund and raised her spear staff from the shield's side. By a whim, a red chain lightning spell was cast from the spear towards the 2 arch-wizards. One of them was about to repel it with a ward, but his instincts told him to not even come in contact with that spell. He hurriedly backed off. Be careful, brother. That woman is not a mage, she is a warlock, or rather, a witch. A witch and her protector. What a troublesome duo. Foo. Jenna seemed to be amused as her identity as a dark magic user was exposed. Tormund gave a tired sigh as he prepared to tank for his wife as she attacks. On another side, Tyr was fighting silently with another arch-wizard. The 2 of them moved like wind and disappeared like shadows. Being an arch-wizard doesn't only mean being a spellcaster. Arch-wizards can be scary warriors, such as Tyr's match. The two were both assassins and warriors with a lot of magical ability. They appeared and disappeared as they pleased and laid a lot of traps to each other, but their fight was simply going to take forever. Nurina was focused on a magical clash with a very old high elf. The two skillfully manipulated the elements and put down a show of absolute arcane. I heard about this way in manipulating magic long ago. It seems you are from the followers of one of Lord Divaith Fwr's students. How strange to see one of you here, or rather, how not strange. Is that an insult? No, not at all. You dark elves are travelers by nature, and Lord Divaith Fwr is one of the best travelers, if not the best known on Nirn. Sadly, we don't see eye to eye, and who am I to voice an opinion against the Grand Arch-Magus of this realm? A resentment against Grandmaster Divaith, then. How unexpected. Well, the unexpected thing is to see a girl like you from a great line of mages taking a cursed human child as her student and child. Linking such a troublesome kid to the great line of Divaith Fwr students, this child is getting scarier by the second. Don't talk about John, dying old thing. Fu. As Nurina was exchanging insults calmly with her old opponent. A reckless fight was happening on the other side. Shit! How can that woman jump the far? Don't ask me, you two need to just get away from here. 3 arch-wizards were locked down by Hilda on her own. The bloody Hilda, famed for her bloodthirsty fighting style, was akin to a Death Reaper on the field. She moved in a red beeline formed by her aura and hair, then struck down with her axe towards the elves. 2 of the 3 were supposed to sneak towards John's location, but Hilda was fixed on making them run around like a lioness chasing a herd of animals. Leave that crazy woman to me. You take the long turn. One of the mages said as he started to cast many illusions everywhere. Numerous clones of him appeared all around Hilda and all moved around at the same time. Hilda stopped and looked around, but she wasn't any good with magic, so she couldn't tell illusion from reality. Still, it was all the same. Die, you bastards! She waved her axe in a whirlwind style, annihilating all the clones 4 meters around her. She then looked around and jumped up high, landing on a certain clone. Found you! I can smell your fear. She waved her axe down to behead the elf, but the clone turned into nothing once it got killed. Please, woman. Give an arch-wizard some credit. Whatever clone it is, I can be it. Even if you find me, I can still move to another clone. The elf said as he tried to make her mind get jumbled with magic for her to lose vision. Once he made sure that her senses are disabled, he and the clones attacked with daggers all at the same time. As Hilda was about to get stabbed in all her vitals, she turned around so fast, facing the right elf clone with an expressionless face. The elf was too close to Hilda and he instantly panicked. He jumped away and hid among his clones once again. A strange cold feeling appeared on the side of his neck, and he touched it to check. He found a thin line of blood coming from a scratch on his neck. Looking back at Hilda again, he found a small knife in her hand. What kind of monster is she? He was this close to death to the point that he felt a strange thrill of danger invading his thoughts. This battle can't be easily decided, as the two were the worst match of each other. Sigurd Moonblade was standing silently facing another arch-wizard. The two moved not a step or uttered not a word as they kept looking at each other still. The two looked very exhausted. This wasn't a normal battle, as it seemed the two were fighting mentally. When mages and warriors reach a certain level of experience, they can completely invade their opponent's thoughts and pry on their move. The two were like that, fighting a battle that cannot be seen or happen, an endless struggle, conflicting tactic. The 7 fighters on each side put their all in a duel of life and death, pushing and pulling the boundaries of their fighting styles to cope with the excellently matched or badly matched opponent. Amidst the fight, 2 of the 9 arch-wizards managed to sneak away from the intercepting forces. We can't waste time. Once we get rid of the threat, we should come back and annihilate those opponents. Let's hurry then. They were charging towards the peak where John was as fast as they could, but unknown to them, another opponent was drawing nearer. Ha! 2 gleaming blades fell from the sky towards the 2 arch-wizards. Soulrender and Bloodscythe were down to claim lives, but the arch-wizards dodged with ease. What now? One of them spoke annoyingly. To the side, a flying creature was approaching, and on its back, a girl with long black hair and red angry eyes. Her long beautiful face froze the air in the lungs for a second, but the old arch-wizards were not easily swayed. It is that human girl. Prepare the protection spell. In front of Alina, who rendered an arch-wizard to the ground with only her angry stare, the rest can't be careless anymore. 2 water screen ward spells formed in front of the wizards to block any other stare from Alina. Lochther, maneuver, Alina said as she took out a lever-action crossbow with anti-magic bolt. Wicked girl. Trickster. The 2 elves wouldn't want to come in contact with those bolts. They were strong, but anti-magic enchantments would take a lot of magicka to dispel. Alina shot a few bolts as Lochther circled around the arch-wizards, who kept dodging. Get that griffin. We need to capture such a rare breed, and that girl too. The 2 arch-wizards were not even pressured by someone with Alina's level. Her actions were merely child's play to them. One of them cast telekinesis and forced Lochther down carefully, while the other tried to cast paralyze on Alina midair. Fat chance. Alina abandoned Lochther and jumped on her own, pulling her swords back with telekinesis. Without any delay, her inner casting technique started working on Frost Steps spell. Icicles of frost appeared midair as she stepped on them, dodging any hostile spell on her own. Damn, she has skill. The male arch-wizard admired Alina's movements. Just shoot her down before she used those cursed eyes. The female arch-wizard cussed at him as she started to bind Lochther down. Alina approached the mage with haste, putting the strength of her frost aura in her arms and waving her swords horizontally. The male arch-wizard simply waved his left hand and deflected the energy of her 2 blades on her, causing the swords to break away from her hands, and stretched his other hand to hold her from her head. Ha ha! Be a good girl and come now. As a disgusting smile appeared on his face, Alina was already planning ahead. Her foot was right close to the arch-wizard, and somehow managed to print a rune spell under the elf's feet. He noticed, but it was already too late. The spell wasn't anything fancy. To hide the lethality of the rune, Alina used a simple teleportation spell that switched places between her and the male arch-wizard. Wait! He tried to look back hurriedly, but Alina was driving her kick in the man's groans. Arch-wizard nuts are still nuts, bastard. Using a vulgar language wasn't something Alina would do, but the situation called for it. As she managed to put the male arch-wizard down, she was assaulted by an angry female arch-wizard who jumped on her and tried to kill her barehanded. You bitch! How dare you do that to my husband? Alina was struggling under the mysterious strength of the body of an arch-wizard. She barely held to the woman's wrists and quivered her words out. Sorry, his nuts were soft. John has bigger nuts. You crazy human bitch. Those were my husband's nuts. I'll make you wear them around your severed neck. Ah! The enraged women turned the fight from a battle to a catfight. The male arch-wizard on the back held his nuts with teary eyes. Stop talking about my nuts. Hold her down. The arch-wizard wife shouted at her husband as she pushed Alina towards him and took out a long Aldmeri saber. She was about to wave it at Alina, but Lochther broke free from his binds and flew towards the woman with a raging screech. Wife, watch out! The male arch-wizard pulled his wife away from Lochther's way and was about to bind the griffin, but some change happened too fast. A gigantic shadow appeared in the sky and descended too fast towards Alina and the female arch-wizard. Everyone on the battlefield noticed the large creature that appeared from the mountain. No. The mortal said not to let anyone touch you. I am screwed. Hey, you, come here. Not sure what they saw, a strange demonic-looking creature larger than any giant with large bat wings and big evil draconic head descended over Alina. He looked at the female arch-wizard, and its head descended on her in a second. Not sure how, the creature opened its mouth and swallowed the female arch-wizard in one go. No, wifey. The male arch-wizard almost broke into madness when his wife was swallowed like that. Alina was still looking at the creature with frozen blood, as well as the other masters from the Thalmor and Winterhold's side. Oblivion, even Ulfric Stormcloak and Elenwen, who were battling to the west, saw the large creature and seized their action immediately. Well, I'll be damned! The sight of Zykel was completely unexpected, more than the war mammoth unit, the cannons, the falling wall and the Tesla towers. Maybe not as scary as the Soundless Zone and the heavenly tribulations happening at the mountaintop. The 7 masters of Winterhold retreated towards Alina, and the Thalmor masters retreated towards the elf arch-wizard who just lost his wife. Zykel was right in between. He looked left and right, then figured out the situation. With a wave of his head, he spat out the female arch-wizard, which was in a haggard state. Sorry about the sudden interference. I don't think I should care about mortals fighting each other to oblivion, but the mortal told me to keep that female mortal safe. No one comes near her for the moment. Zykel seemed overprotective about Alina. On the other hand, the arch-wizards helped the woman that was just spat by the Daedric Titan, covered in a layer of slimy saliva. Zykel noticed her too. Sorry about that, this body is still not that good with oral jobs. At least you ended up without being eaten. The female arch-wizard looked at Zykel with a resentful and silent look. She then raised her finger and pointed towards the Daedric Titan. Kill it. Chapter 392, Above Mundus. Important. The following content is partially a fanfiction but based on my own speculations and a lot of unlicensed content written by former writers to the Elder Scrolls series. Some content is also completely made up from the bone, but at least based on some thin lore. Enjoying Heartsuit. Whoa. Look at that! Showered by the beam of ethereal light, John's body withstood the suppression of the Mundus by its sheer willpower while his consciousness traveled to another place. It was completely unexpected and unforeseen, but it was a welcome change in events. John kept looking around and smiled wryly. So the ethereal tribulations are not just about suppressing the soul from gaining enough energy, but also to test the mind. This is brilliant. The wisdom of Lorcan Shore is vast. In mere 4 years, John hoarded enough magic and knowledge to rival many great names in the history of this world, and now, he reached a certain step that was really breathtaking. Realizations arrived one after the other, and many secrets of the world started to reveal itself to him. He broke the taboo and now ate the forbidden fruit, the knowledge and wisdom that formed the essence of the binds of the Mundus. The creation started with the counterparts Anu and Padme, whose souls are Anwiel and Sithis, and their offspring were Auriel and Lorcan, and by the existence of time, others came forth. Now that elvish creation myth not far from the truth if one put away all the discriminations against Lorcan and the original spirits that followed him, but there were lost traces of the story that John could pick from where he stands. The original spirits were all powerful, terrible and mighty. Born with such powers, they shouldn't have deserved it from the beginning. Lorcan's scheme was to put them in the prison of mortality, known as the Mundus, and rather than being immortals, they can be mortals and have offspring of their own which may be better than their predecessors and gain the wisdom through growing from weakness. And thus, the original spirits were trapped. The Mundus had many seals. Some were to suppress the energy or to set the power limit, while others were to set the mental limit, all placed to make the perfect trials of the royalty. Why a Daedric prince was called a prince after all. The way of the royalty is the way to ascend from the Mundus and an immortal spirit. by Chim, by Amaranth, by all the known way-walking methods or even meditating the way, one can find a way to ascend the tower. One must understand many concepts and look through many angles at things. As such the scene in front of John right now. He was standing among the stars. Atop of him was nothing but the dark space illuminated by those small dots. Beneath his feet there was a large globe of blue oceans, large continents and white clouds. On the near distance there were 2 moons, and on the far distance there was a sun surrounded by 9 globes, including the one beneath his feet. Such a thing, it makes sense, but it doesn't. Beneath his feet was Nirn, a planet that took the same position of Earth in the solar system, with other planets known by the names of the 9 imperial divines going around the sun. This scene is not an illusion or some sort of dream. This is John's astral projection reaching a height never recorded or passed down, showing the real truth of the world. Not what was always passed down as a Nirn in the center with every planet at the sun going around it, not the rumored hub of the wheel as it was passed down. It was just another dull planet. But was it really the case? The world may look like this in the eyes of a physical onlooker, but from a spiritual perspective, things looked completely different. The Eye of Magica, a spell John learned in the depth of Divaith Fyr's dungeon that let him take a glimpse at what lies beyond nature, was the key spell to take a good look at the true shape of the world. John closed his eyes and opened the third eye, which appeared like the insignia of an eye on his forehead. The scene was completely different. It was now the Nirn in the center and all going around it. I see. Ah, how smart. The world wasn't just as it was told it was. Just like a mortal, there were 2 versions of reality: the physical world and the metaphysical world. The physical world followed the rules of physics and astronomy, being shaped as a complete world based on an ideal cosmological basis. The metaphysical world was a different look to the world based on its spiritual structure, a knowledge that can be considered part of the secret of transcending. John's understanding of the case was swift and simple. He thought of it as radio frequency. Reality formed by time and space also has frequencies, and changing how the perception receives the signals of these frequencies is the secret of how to see the physical world and the metaphysical world. Why no one has never found out about this? Who said no one knew? It is just not necessary to tell. Magic is what mattered, and as far as magic was concerned, the metaphysical world is what mattered. Now, to break the rules of the Mundus, one must be strong enough to do so and resist the world's suppression, but that's merely the first step. When Lorcan created the Mundus, he put limits and trials to those who want to return back to the immortal plane, and now was the mind trial. Above Nirn and around it, the other planes of the metaphysical world appeared clearly. A world of plains of flowers, a world of myriad rivers and mountains, a world of brass surface, and so on. Looking further, one could see more worlds out there. The metaphysical world may have mainly the 8 planes of the divines going around Nirn, but there was way more than that. Smaller planes here, and there were also part of this large Mundus, so of which are small and some are fairly large, some are near and some are far. John looked directly at himself and realized how his manifestation looked like. It made him about to smile and cry at the same time, so bad. A small pebble. This was it. It looked weak, fragile, and needed a lot of protection. Was this all I am? A small pebble in this vast Mundus? Realizing his existence, the current him that broke out of the suppression of the Mundus was just a pebble. It was too tough to accept even for John. Sigh. Compared to these large planes over there, I am very untimely and premature existence. I should have waited at least to break from the Mundus at a later stage, maybe after the dragon frame realm, when I form my spirit spark. Good grief. John walks the way through meditating and refining the magica between Aetherius and Nirn. He is not the only one who did so, but his way is the most effective. All mages meditate in order to learn how to handle magicka for the first time in their lives. Each magical tome carries a hint on how to meditate and cast a spell, but John's unique method only revolves around meditating. It gave him the edge over many other before him. His pebble may grow larger one day from this premature state of his, yet he has already performed something incredible. He broke the first seal of the Mundus and is about to break the second. The second test is to find the way up. Simply put it as finding the way to the tower. Understanding the difference between the physical world and the metaphysical world is crucial and very important. Unlike Earth, Nirn is familiar with the metaphysical world, whose structure defies any cosmological sense, while Earth was familiar with the physical world, totally oblivious if there is a metaphysical world, or not in terms of science if the faiths and beliefs were overlooked. Accepting the fact that there are two worlds within one existence required a lot of mental burden to whoever takes the second test, but John is not the kind who would be burdened by such a fact. He is a reincarnator from a different world and spent all his life trying to study the new world he was thrown into. Seeing how the cosmos defied sense, John always believed that there is a secret behind the weird structure of the orbis. Discovering the Shadow Realm and the Dragon Breaks made John understand that reality can be several and frequent like radio transmissions. Just finding that out is already too much for many of this world's inhabitants, even though anyone who reaches this point of existence is simply a mighty entity. Now to go further, one must find the way forward on his own. John wouldn't suffer by that one either. He looked at Nirn, understanding it is the center of the Mundus, which is the hub of the orbis. He turned around his pebble body freely and realized that he can move to some extent. He compared the other plane's positions with Nirn and arrived at a certain angle to his vision. It was too humongous to see such a thing this easily, but he knew what he was looking for. The orbis is a wheel shaped like an O with 8 pillars as the Edric planes and 16 spurs as the Daedric planes. Seeing them all at one place was mentally burdening, and John felt exhausted, but he can at least find the missing piece for his vision to be complete. The sun over there, the hole tearing between Mundus and Aetherius through oblivion. The Magnus, it is called, or the Eye of the Dragon. As the sun aligned with the other planes in John's vision, a strong light overtook everything around him, and he felt captured by it. The small pebble he has started to flow in a large stream of cosmological force until the scene turned stranger than before. The physical world is fixed and bound by the mundane laws, but the metaphysical world is not. It has two states, or rather two shapes. The orbis, which is O, is the first shape, and then comes the I. The being rather than a structure, the flow of power and existence, and the power beyond all reach. The tower. The planes flowed, and so did the stars, as if a stream of fluid or a state of rising out of space and time. The pebble that John is looked closely to the large, I seeing no end to its height, for only those planes which are powerful rise up with the small pitiful ones keep it down. Stars and planes entwined, some greater than others. Ones moved in the stream, and a few found their own way around it in serpentine move. The base of the eye was most crowded, with many trying to find the way up, as if the large tower had a cone base made of large streams of planes. A pebble can't even measure to that. John only found the safest distance to feel the flow of the tower and to make a connection with its forces. He can't start the third test just yet, as the tower may zero-sum him. Him being a Dragonborn has no value in the tower. Being zero-summed is worse than death. It is the worst of all possibilities. It is being erased of existence and cast out of all memories. The third test is a bit too much compared to the first and the second, but reaching this point was enough. I am impressed. A voice reached out to John. Really? John replied. Indeed, what you did was truly admirable. Thank you, Shadow. A strange stream of light hovered around the pebble. Its identity was revealed to John right away. You are not trying the third gate? Shadow asked. Being here is more than enough, there is no need for hassle. I've got to maintain my position this far from the tower, else things won't look good for me. I am far too weak. Then what? I am anticipating. Anticipating. Good choice. 10 minutes is all I can give you. 10 minutes is all I need. Chapter 393 Demigod. A lot of thanks to Derek Palm. He gets a ticket to Sovngarde. Winterhold's defenders overtook the northern field, and their axes and spears with shields formations were too fierce and viscous. Adapted to the snow and rocky battlefields, the Dare troopers used the boar formation to precisely curve through their enemies. In the south, where the attackers were rendered to defend themselves by the War Mammoth unit, the Dare troopers used the testudo formation of the Imperial Legion, aka Tortoise formation, with large wooden tower shields and javelins to strike the trapped attackers from various sides using the advantage of the high ground. The battle, of course, took a little pause with the strange beam of light from the south of Winterhold reaching between Aetherial and Nirn, but when the masters of both sides moved to battle each other, the situation turned into a slaughterhouse once again. The chasing team returned to lock the west of the battlefield this time, with 2,000 fresh cavalrymen from Solitude under the lead of High King Torrig himself. Your Grace, I don't think this situation can be resolved with peace anymore. This is a killing zone. Falk Firebeard stated. I was told to handle the powerful mages, but 10 elven archwizards is a bit too much for even me. Sybil Stentor said, supporting Falk's opinion. Mammoths, a large army, battle formations, magic weapons and that beam going in the sky, was Winterhold preparing this all along? Their numbers might reach 10,000 by the looks of it, and they are not even pressured. Did they really need our help? Balgir Bearclaw, Torrig's housecarl, spoke. Look, even Ulfric Stormcloak and his goons are here. Falk added. By a smear. Torrig swore in a low voice and kept thinking. Balgir, Falk, you two ride ahead with 500 each. Carry the banners of Solitude and the High King and stop all this madness. Nords killing each other for what? This is a pointless slaughter. I'll deal with Ulfric and Elenwen. The cavalrymen of Solitude broke on 3 teams, each to stop a fight. The chances were slim, but the High King's banner had its value among Nords. Its weight was something unimaginable, and could move all the clans, the Jorvisker and every lawful force under the sky of Skyrim. This is what means to be the High King. On Ulfric's front, he was feeling kind of worried and kind of excited. His aim was clearer and clearer when this beam of light appeared. He always had that thing with Elenwen, like the cat and mouse they always acted. He would chase after her head, but she would always turn the tables on him. He would vex her by killing her justiciars and pillaging their camps out of eastern Skyrim discreetly, and she would always find a way to gain something from the losses, vexing him even more. It started from the day he abandoned the life of becoming a greybeard and descended the Snowthroat to participate in the Great War. He was young and brutish, yet his voice was ever so powerful. Imprisoned during the last siege on the Imperial City, and the interrogation he went through was crucial for the fall of the city, or so he believed. This time, however, things are totally different. It started with a Nordic charge breaking down the Thalmor forces, and a showdown between him and Elenwen, which almost was about to end ugly for him, when the 9 arch-wizards, if not for the sudden beam of light coming from the east. Now and for the first time, Ulfric could see Elenwen's face turning desperate. Move! She struck her blade at him while glaring. Ha! Nice try. Ulfric laughed it off as he deflected the attack with his shield. He was enjoying every little detail of her expressions. She always looked down on him with a cold look in her eyes, but now the situation was turned around. Elenwen and her unit were trying to reach the beam of light, but Ulfric and his war band were hellbent on not letting them leave. The sense of crisis in Elenwen's mind was very clear to Ulfric as he drove out every ounce of his focus in this fight. The Nibear of Markarth showed off his power to a frightening degree, locking down an arch-wizard like Elenwen down, without taking a single step back. His aura, which was akin to the power of frost similar to Alina's, was having a hint of bestial feeling to it, as if an image of a large snow bear was forming around Ulfric. His aura was manifesting itself slowly, and the bear was pouring every bit of his battle hunger on the elf in front of him, driving her back. I said move. She couldn't take it anymore either and went full force on Ulfric. In terms of the physical ability, an Altmare woman who specialized in magic was much more vulnerable than a Nord man specializes in battle spirit, but her magic output broke sense itself. A warrior is vulnerable to frost, but Ulfric's aura negated that effect, and all she could do was to either counter him with flame or lightning. Ulfric and Elenwen engrossed themselves in the fight until someone interfered. A flashy shock beam spell was cast between Ulfric and Elenwen and went between the Stormcloaks and the Thalmor, dividing the two parties apart. Everyone looked towards the source of the beam. From a higher ground to the north, there was a hooded rider with heavy clothing and long ebony staff. From the looks of it, it was a mage as capable as Elenwen and the arch-wizards. By Talos, a monster after the next. Who are you? Why would you stop this fight? Ulfric sighed, then shouted. The riders coolly put the staff away and turned around with her horse, showing no interest in reply. A second after, a band of 1,000 riders flowed from the mage's sides towards Ulfric and Elenwen, carrying the banner of solitude. Tisk! Ulfric's face twisted as he looked away. High King Torrig and his men arrived between the two parties, and the cavalry of Solitude forced the Stormclax and the Thalmor away with force and intimidation. Gazes of contempt and hate were exchanged between the three parties. Jarl Ulfric, I think the bloodshed should end up here, don't you think? The High King crossed in front of Ulfric with his horse before turning around to him. Ulfric didn't want to reply. May I have your assistance at that? The clans will listen to you as one of this age's heroes. Please, a lot of death will be avoided. Those are some marauders, your grace. Galmar Stonefist, Ulfric's commander, stepped forward. Are they? Falk Firebeard was right in Torrig's heel. That's what they pose as. Galmar pointed at Elenwen and her Thalmor force, hiding their identities in regular brigands' armors different from their usual elven armor and Thalmor robes. Even Elenwen and the arch-wizards were dressed in plain black robes and big hoods to hide their identities. First Ambassador, shall we stop this? High King Torrig turned to Elenwen. Humph! She only snorted and kept her face hidden under her hood. Her identity as the first ambassador cannot be confirmed, or a real political drama will happen between the Empire and the Dominion. Her eyes, however, were focused on the fight she badly wanted to interfere with. The fight over there between the Masters of the Thalmor was tilting to the side of the Thalmor, but the Masters of Winterhold were really some relentless bunch. The thing they are trying to prevent may happen if they waited any longer. Now with not only Ulfric but now Torrig and his men, this was kinda impossible to do. She just wanted a chance to drive those men away and charge with her men towards the other masters. Go. A voice called to her. What? Go. I'll hold them. You've got to stop the cursed child. I know what he is doing, I've seen it before. Go. Master, wait. You can't use magic right now, your wounds are not healed yet. Too late. The 10th arch-wizard of the bunch, who was injured by Alina's eyes, seems to have gone against the odds and used magic somehow. She was now going to do something to aid her apprentice, Elenwen. But, Master. Not buts. Through the north. Now. Elenwen moved by instincts and headed to the north. On the south, near the foothills of Mount Anther, an avalanche started to occur. What? Stop her. Ulfric called. Wait. Torrig wanted to stop the reckless action as soon as possible. From the north, the enemies were on the run, and from the south, big masses of snow were falling from the mountain. Damn it! Fuss ro da. Ulfric could only shout at the avalanche to slow its unnatural charge down. Elenwen and her men used every ounce of their magicka to speed up their run and ran as fast as horses toward the top-tier battle at the foot of the mountain to the east, yet something unexpected occurred. A large shadow descended from the mountain and joined the battle. The large creature was something only spoken of in the legends of the Alliance War, and by the ones who were lucky enough to survive a very scary trip through the Daedric plain of Kaldharbor. The high elven arch-wizards all retreated away from the foul creature, while it seemed to be protecting the masters of Winterhold or Alina to be specific. Elenwen and her men could only halt their steps in awe of the mighty aura that being gave off. Something like that was really a hurdle to fight. It suddenly opened its mouth, spat someone out and spoke some words, then attacked the 9 arch-wizards with a blue fire breath. "This is a dragon?" one of the men asked. "No. It is just a Daedric imitation of one. Not even an arch-wizard can conjure something that size." Elenwen was impressed. "You are not getting anywhere." Suddenly, and from the side, a shadow leaped towards Elenwen. "Damn you!" Frustrated, Elenwen engaged in another fight with a single mage. It was Sybil Stentor, the mage who stopped the fight of the Thalmor and the Stormcloaks. "You go!" Elenwen shouted at her lieutenants, and they charged ahead as a force of 2,000 Thalmor warriors and battle mages. The fight was heating and chaos spread all at once. Even the Tower of Music started playing a new tone. It was a strange and untimely calm music. Got OST a light of the 7. Haha, this thing is good. Ulfric took a strange liking to the music. He felt his energy and blood stabilize at a rapid pace while the enemies started to fall into worry. This was the magical tonal effect of the piece. He gathered his strength into another shout and his voice echoed. Iziaseliennos. Ice, flesh, statue. The ice form shout was directed at the avalanche and the arch-wizard creating it. It was as if an opposite rising avalanche faced a falling one and the rising took over the other one. The arch-wizard on the foothills of Mount Anther wasn't even ready or able to cast any sort of protection. Die! Ulfric focused his aura on his legs and leaped in the air almost 50 meters, then waved his axe at the arch-wizard's neck, beheading her. The first to fall in from the ranks of the masters was none other than the 500-years-old master of Elenwen. No! Elenwen's voice echoed as high as Ulfric's shout, seeing the head of her master roll down. Ulfric held the head up from its hair and raised up for his men to see. He then pointed with the axe towards the charging elf. Sons and daughters of Skyrim, defend the land of Iskramor, defend Sarthal, defend your brother John Dare. For Skyrim, for Sovngarde. Eowa! Oh! Everyone roared after Ulfric. He used his willpower and shouted a hearty and Nordic battle cry. Every one of his men, and even Torig's people, were hyped by its effect. On top of that, the Tower of Music's tones were rising and lowering with Ulfric's actions leading the atmosphere to all gather around him. On the other side, the arch-wizards of the Thalmor were fighting as one, creating a massive magic array to annihilate their opponents in one go. Their only hope was for the reinforcement of the 2,000 to arrive soon enough. Sadly, Ulfric and his men were on their heels. Just 1 second was enough to finish this all. The music reached its climax with the battle, and no one could ever tell how will this end. Everyone's blood was boiling, everyone was ready to draw blood. Chaos was ready to take grasp of the situation as the music. Suddenly, it happened. The beam of light intensified and turned as red as John's tyrant aura. A suffocating feeling as if time stopped, but everyone was conscious of it, and all looked around to see how the beam of red light enveloped everything in one go. And the light exploded. And there was no beam. Only a sky turning from dark to red and a man descending from heaven. The arch-wizards looked at him and recognized him. At him, shoot! With a whisper of one of them, the large array spell that was directed at the large Daedric Titan and the Masters of Winterhold was directed at the Flying Man. A large destructive spell of pure energy hurled to where he is, but it passed him, or rather, he wasn't there anymore. They all sensed the crisis. Where? They looked all around them, but nowhere he was seen. An instant later, a large handsome young man, with blue eyes and long red hair reaching to his knees, was standing between them. He had a wide smile on his face as his fist was striking down the ground. Cliffhanger. Chapter 394 Battle End 1. Blade of Slaughter. Bonus chapter before the reset comes to you by @DerekPalm. A strong shockwave formed from just one single punch on the ground. The arch-wizard were scattered in every direction right away and lost the advantage of forming an array. Still, none of them were badly injured thanks to the top-tier treasures and artifacts they have on them, as well as their long years of experience and battle. Still, as far as they could tell when they looked at John, this is something out of the ordinary. The cloud of dust and snow settled as a large crack appeared on the ground with John standing in the middle. His appearance reflected a great deal of the experience he has been through. He was only in a large armored girdle covering his waist, as if he is one of those warrior heroes of old. The feeling around him was mystic and profound to the extreme, and he had a sure grip of the power in his hands. He looked at everything once at the same time, and all fell in awe for the unfathomable depth they saw in his eyes. Every bit of energy settled down, as if a large sea of calm, unmoving water. That was simply no longer a mortal. The ones who realized it all were the Arch-Wizard. They saw it before not too far from Winterhold. 200 miles and years ago to the east of Winterhold, there lies the kingdom of Morrowind beyond the Velothi Mountains. Those Arch-Wizards were once envoys to such a place where 3 living god kings ruled over the kingdom along with its legitimate mortal rulers. These were the Elmsi6, Almalexia, Vivek and Sotha Sil. Just now, John Hild Firemane, known to them as the cursed child of imminent disaster, was giving off the same power those living gods gave off back when they were still alive. In those days, those 3 were the mightiest force on Tamriel as they attained divinity with the disappearance of the Dwemer from year 1 E700 till 3 times 10 to the power of 427, which is almost 3,500 years. The how, in the minds of those Arch-Wizard was explained on a rapid pace when they saw what was in John's hands. His right arm was clad in a bright gauntlet made of a hefty piece of dwarven metal holding a short hammer and a blue crystal blade fixed on the gauntlet. The appearance of those artifacts spoke of their identity right away. The tools of Kagranak, which, Wraithguard, the gauntlet, asunder the hammer and keening, the dagger. The appearance of those 3 relics struck deep in the hearts of the Arch-Wizards, almost causing their blood to flow backward. 3 Elder Scrolls and the tools of Kagranak. Just what on Nirn did fate hide more in the path of John Dare? This was not important for now. The main character of this battle is here. Someone has to stop him, and someone has to relay a message to the whole Aldmeri Dominion. This human has to be stopped by any means possible, even if the elven ancestors themselves were to be called back. Lanner, head back on your own with Elenwen. You too must survive. The oldest Arch-Wizard whispered to one of his colleagues before walking forward. I assume you are John Dare. He spoke to John eye to eye. John's deep eyes moved towards the Arch-Wizard slowly, and the elements of nature were all directed to the man. Gasps escaped everyone's mouth. This power was too wild for something like the world itself to react with John's power. John opened his mouth and spoke slowly. Fight or die. With those words, John waved his hand quite slowly, but Sunder was launched like a cannonball towards the old Arch-Wizard. In an instant, the hammer took the Arch-Wizard and crushed back at the ground almost 200 meters away from the old man's first location. Through those 200 meters, the old Arch-Wizard seemed to have lost limbs and pieces of his body before crushing down by the force of the hammer. Was there a chance of survival? Of course not. This was an overkill. John opened his palm open and asunder, flew back to him. Fight or die. The High Elves couldn't recover from the shock they fell to, and so no one else. Other than the 9 arch-wizard, or rather the 8, none of the ones around have ever met a demigod before. The deep look in John's eyes was now understood. He was in a highly focused state of battle craziness. He wanted them to fight him, if not, they'd die. In the end, there was no leeway out of this. He looked at them for a few seconds, seeing how they are all frozen, and his face twisted in anger. Come! A shout from him made them all wake up from their frozen state. Battle me! Then he stepped forward. You think it is honorable ganging up against one the weak to rob them as you see fit? Yes, it is not a shameful act. The strong prey on the weak, I don't hate you for it. But what I hate is that how you bunch got cold feet after being bested. At least you fought the odds just a while ago, but now what? Think you being scared will spare your lives? Everyone has the right to fight and battle no matter the enemy, and now your enemy is me. You have no right to freeze still, you have no right to remain silent. Fight me! John was not giving them a leeway, that's true, but he was giving them enough courtesy and respect to fight back or die with dignity, even if they are Thalmor. Seeing the leader of their enemies pumping up their spirits to fight him, such a thing was unheard of. Run? How could they? He will kill them either way. Fight. Then die. What on earth was that logic? Still, it was really simple. Death is imminent, either die with honor or die without it. And if they lived, it would mean they earned their lives back. A simple choice indeed. The ones who understood that were not the long-living arch-wizards, but rather the Thalmor soldiers. No matter the contempt they held towards humans, there is possible and impossible, there is strong and weak. When the odds are impossible and the enemy is strong, wasn't honor the least thing they could win? With a deep breath, a Thalmor justiciar pointed his sword at the approaching John. He is the enemy commander. Kill him and bring glory to our— He paused, his words understanding the political weight of them, to our ancestors. Forward! What is left of the Thalmor force of 2,000 high elf warrior and arch-wizard all marched as one towards John, and John walked towards them. As he saw their response, he smiled wide and praised them in his heart. Thalmor they may be, but they knew that their life is not how they lived but how they died. He took the tools of Kagranak and off in the cube, and seemed to be going to fight them with his bare hands. He flexed his fingers and shoulders as he and the elves charged at each other. Then another change happened. The ends of his fingers started to grow as claws, his eye pupils turned into slits, and his teeth grew larger fangs. On his head, unnoticeable because of his hair, 2 feline ears formed. He jumped high and clashed with the Thalmor 2,000, cutting and slashing with his claws as lines of red blood splattered to the sky. John stood at the other side with every inch of his body covered in red blood. Even though they were golden, their blood was still red, not different than any man. John's bestial transformation ended when a black cat walked out of his shadow. She transformed into a slim teenage girl in a black dress, then her figure disappeared from its place, and appeared on the other side of the Thalmor arch-wizards. The fight just a second ago was so fast for anyone to comprehend. 2,000 soldiers died in 1 minute. Each step John took during the fight was akin to 100 meters on its own, and each wave of his hands killed too many. With John at the front and Nefertiti at the back, it would take the Thalmor arch-wizards a tough fight to break from hearing. John dare, you bite more than what you can chew. We are arch-wizards, and we have our positions. Even if you are a demigod now, you are not a match for the Dominion, and you can't hold us down here all by yourself. An arch-wizard shouted with a hysterical tone. Really? John tilted his head. With that word, 2 more figures appeared on the open flanks to the arch-wizards. Zykel was blocking one side and Odakuro appeared on another. Similar to Jon's and Nefertiti's change, Odokuro seemed to have also transformed into some hint of a golden skeleton with ebony gear and an angry masked kabuto of a wrathful Oni. 8 arch-wizards which represented the power and the might of the war machine known as the Aldmeri Dominion and were parts of the ruling faction of Alinar are now being put to the blade in Skyrim by an 18-years-old Nord. This won't end well for you, Nord. The Main will hear about this, the Sylvanar will hear about this, and most certainly Her Majesty, the Queen of Alinar, the Overlord of the Aldmeri Dominion will hear about this. The arch-wizard kept howling his lungs out. Good, Jon replied. So let this serve as a warning to whoever dares. Jon raised his hands towards the arch-wizard and the world obeyed. The elf shivered in his place and started groaning without uttering a scream. His limbs were twisting, his bones were breaking, everything went into the wrong direction inside his body. Jon hated arrogance except for his own. The elf was twisting while being maintained alive for his grave sin of speaking out of order. He was no longer recognizable and an elf being. His body became a mess as a mass of twisting and twirling flesh as his bones were all ground over while being kept alive to the best of Jon's ability. The current living mass of mess was pressured to the extreme and reduced to the least of all forms. Jon released his powers and left the tiny remnant of the elf to fall down on the white snow as a drop of blood. The other 7 arch-wizards kept looking at the weird phenomenon in silence, knowing that this bloodthirsty demon is no longer showing any face to a title or a crown. Even the High King didn't utter a word to stop the bloodshed when Jon appeared, so who may speak. The end of the arch-wizard just now was brutal, and the magic itself was disobeying them whenever they tried to make any move not from suppression but from their broken wills. Now I offer you the same, fight or die. Chapter 395 Battle End 2 Blade of Mercy. 7 corpses fell around Jon in less than a minute. There was no much resistance offered. The first tried to assassinate Jon from the side, but Kick just kicked him back towards Odokuro, who raised its ebony katana and slashed one time at the elf, who split in half. The second tried to launch a strong forbidden spell towards the ones behind Jon, so that Jon gets forced to defend them, but Nefertiti beheaded the insolent fool. The third and the fourth formed a dual spell to use illusions and escape, but Zykel blew fire breath, didn't spare a clone or an original, and Jon killed the 2 mages by making the magicka explode in their hearts. The 5th mage was launching about to teleport away, yet Jon only stretched his hand and pulled back the mage through space from where he teleported to impale him with a spear from the ground. The 6th mage was clever and summoned mighty-looking frost Atranax and hid within them, but Odokuro's katana found its way to his heart. The last and the 7th arch-wizard was a close combat mage who tried his best to attack Nefertiti, only for her to punch his guts and for Zykel to wave its mace-like tail at him, sending him towards Odokuro, which stepped on the arch-wizard, making him kneel down and executed him with the katana. That was simply the fight, no wasting time or anything. Each arch-wizard couldn't last a single exchange. The power of the demigod was a world apart from the arch-wizard. One must take note that in between the demigod realm and that arch-wizard realm there is a realm known as the Ancestor realm. The Ancestors is not an official rank like the arch-wizard, which is the apex of the arcane arts. Ancestors can be warriors or anything, and can even be more powerful than some demigods. All in all, Ancestors are the most powerful existences a mortal can be, and their ages are mostly over 1,000 years old. Divaith Fyr and his clone daughters are all Ancestors, and so is Lord Harkon of the Fokihar clan. No mundane force can order the Ancestors around, and the Ancestors are always uninterested in the world of mortals, spending their lives in seclusion to find ways to attain divinity. In the end, no matter how the Thalmor in front of Jon tried, they were too outranked in every term or advantage. 5 minutes from Jon's appearance has passed, and the whole Thalmor force, save for Elenwen, was completely annihilated. John looked at Elenwen and spoke words inaudible to any other but her. She, who has fallen on her knees since her force was all gone and lost all hope, stood back up again and teleported away. John didn't even stop her. John's eyes then landed on his family starting from Nurina, Hilda, Alina, Jonrad, Tormund, Jenna and Sigurd. Alina smiled at him and walked closer. "You are in one bloody mess," she said. "What's wrong with that?" John laughed. "I came to this world screaming and covered in someone else's blood. I intend to keep doing so from now on." "Boy, you are sick." Jonrad couldn't help but complain. "I am not sick, I am twisted. Sick makes it sound like there is a cure." The light exchange didn't fit the bloody scene around them, and even John wasn't really free to waste time. He looked ahead and his eyes landed on the remaining heads of the clans and their men as they all threw their weapons to the ground. They almost lost about half their armies, and it seemed that even Brahm of Gehenna has managed to capture Orga Stormfist, and threw her among the others who surrendered. John walked beside Brahm and patted his shoulder, then looked to the side and saw his cousin Halfthor riding a mammoth, who seemed to have gone through a tough fight. Zykel flew and landed right beside John, so the latter jumped on him to find Nefertiti, already atop of the Daedric Titan. Odakuro followed on foot and the four mighty beings stood over the captured clan heads and their men. The air around the four gave a strong vibe, but John was the center of the power and his image was godly even when he fought the elves and covered himself with their blood in a fit of madness. In the heads of those Nords, his image formed a certain mad warrior who would cover himself in his enemy's blood as he would tear through the hordes of elves. Those Nords, who would never kneel to a Jarl, king or emperor, knelt down to John uttering the name that came to their minds. Shor! Shor! Hail Shor! In their heads, John was Shor, the chief god of their pantheon and the owner of Sovngarde. John's face was expressionless and indifferent in the past 5 minutes, but it suddenly twisted and turned into absolute anger. "You bastard! How dare you profane that honorable name?" John's anger was genuine. Not even his family saw him this angry before, as this was true wrath. He even waved his hand and a mighty force formed beside those Nords, slapping them all at the same time. Odakuro, the manifestation of wrath, and his soul fragment grew in size an extra meter and shouted to the heavens with the anger of its master. It was about to go and kill all those insolent and ignorant Nords who used a name very sacred in John's book, but John held wrath down. The clan's head and warriors realized their mistake, and stood back up slowly, yet their heads were just looking down and couldn't help to raise it up against that pressure. John took a deep breath and spoke. "Son of Jonrad and Hilda the Bloody, with a mane of fire you'd know me. And ours the wrathful if you dare me, and ours the sharper if you duel me. And in Sarthal we are the mighty, and in Skyrim no soul to hold me. O people of the clans! O people of the schemes and plans! I, John Hild of Clan Firemane, greet you with blades and shackles." John's voice echoed through the land from the attacking clans to the defender forces, from Ulfric to Torrig, from the living to the dead. John's greeted the people with the tone of the victor, but no response was uttered. John's glare burned them all, and made the process breathing so hard. The one who was enraged as much as John was Alina. "The victor lord is greeting you and you don't respond. By Kine, I'd teach you all your place like how the horses are tamed." Alina shouted. Those who were utterly silent loosened their tongues right away. "The Nicker clan greets Lord John Hild. We, the Thornshield clan, greet the noble one John Hild Firemane. The Stormfists of Whiterun greet John Dare. The Krogr clan greets the Thane of Winterhold." Each clan spoke in line one after the other until all the 9 clans greeted back. John's death glare went away as soon as the clans responded. "O people of the clans! I, who bear the lives of people on my shoulders, carry 2 blades. A blade of mercy and a blade of slaughter. As for the blade of mercy, It has fallen from me on the road, so I lost it. As for the blade of slaughter, then here it is." John took out a blood skull. The people shivered at the sight of the blood-red sword. "O people of the clans! I carry the evil deed with its burden and pay for it back with its equal, and I see the eyes of blunt greed and the necks of false pride among you. And I see heads that ripened, for it's time they are culled. And it's my right. And as if I can now see the blood flow between your fallen helms and your drenched beard. I, O people of the clans whose metal is schism and hypocrisy and degeneration, have learned through experience and saw the ultimate purpose as destiny spread its quiver and searched its arrows to find me the hardest and the gravest, so it shot me at you. Because you have fallen to temptation, delusions and followed the ways of falsehood to the point that you marched with the Altmare to the sacred lands of Sarthal wishing to join hands with them and set it aflame like how the Falmer did with Sarthal of Iskramor. By the high heavens, I would grind you for that, how the stones of the quarry are ground and trample over you, how the disobedient beasts are trampled over, and I would educate you with the sword, leaving the women widowed and children orphaned. And I swear on everything that is sacred in Daedric that I never drop a promise, or let go of a word." John came to a halt as he looked down on those men who stood like the broken trees. This was the weight of the truth and the triumph of justice. No falsehood was in John's words regarding any of those dark clans' actions. Death was lurking towards their necks with merely some words said by a youth. From the beginning till now, they died from inside a dozen times each already. Some cried from the shame, and some cried from the unwillingness to be slaughtered like sheep, while the most kept their head low. O people of the clans, as for the blade of slaughter, then I'll drop it on those battlements, for it's only to defend what is dear. John turned around and tossed Bloodskull high in the air as it landed on the gatehouse of Sarthal to stick itself in the wall, carrying a strong hint of John's godly powers. John turned around with a meaningful look in his eyes, asking one last question. "O people of the clans, what say you I do with you?" John's words were unexpected, they left a strange impression on everyone who heard them. None expected those words from any side. He is the victor and the ultimate one at that, even with the High King present. He can't deny John how to deal with his captives unless a ransom is paid. What kind of situation was that? Was he mocking the loser, asking him to decide their own fate? That's not how things went. Still, there was a smart girl who looked up to John and replied to him after studying his eyes. "Do us good," Orga Stormfist shouted. Everyone looked at her, not expecting her blunt reply. John looked at Orga with narrowed eyes. She looked at him back with confidence. "Do us good. You are a good man, from a line of good men." Orga's words were so natural and the look in her eyes was confident. It is as if she found out what and who is John just by seeing him up close. It was a scary ability that made Orga a terrifying judge of characters. Contrary to everyone's expectations and as Orga expected, John smiled casually. "Then go," he said, "save for the clan's leaders, you're free." Chapter 396, Aftermath. Opening his eyes to the bright light coming through the clouds, John rose to sit up. He was surrounded by 3 beautiful girls who seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber after last night's experience. A day has passed since the Battle of Winterhold, and John has officially told everyone to screw off before heading home to his house with Ela and Alina. Then, he picked up Julliner and teleported to a nameless snowy island not far in the Sea of Ghosts. Then he released all of his divine power on that island, rending himself back to mortality and returning to his natural self. The state of immortality he was in was dangerous and couldn't be maintained, as he was borrowing an immense power from a large number of heart stones using the tool of Kagranak. If things went wrong, his body would have been disintegrated from the massive power he held. After all, 1 heart stone can fully resurrect a mortal if all the dangerous side effects were overlooked. Also, becoming a Demi-Ada was too much for a mortal like John to handle. By all means, he wasn't ready or even strong enough. To gloss over the boring details of how the process happened, one must know that the original spirits, Aetherial, are those of the Ada race who possess divine powers. Demi-Ada are also immortals and divine but far less powerful than a regular Ada or an almighty Aetherial, original spirit. Still, just like the normal Ada, a Demi-Ada is possible to emerge by performing one of those 6 walking ways. Not fully, as the Ada can't exist physically in Mundus. The 6 walking ways are the Prolix Towers, the Psijic Endeavor, the Song Rewriting, the Mantelling, Chim, and transforming the Scarab into a new man. The Prolix Towers are those towers that define the reality of the Mundus, which were used by their builders to utilize the powers of the Orbis and mimic the one true tower. Known towers are the White Gold, Green Sap, Snowthroat, Red Mountain, Walkbrass, Crystal Like Law, Orichalc, and Adamantia. The Psijic Endeavor is the way of Saint Veleth, who showed the Chimer how to ascend to immortality by the help of Bothia and Mephala, who denied the falsehoods that the elven ancestor champion, Trinimac, said about Lorcan. The Psijic Endeavor is to process of apotheosis by manipulating time itself. The goal of the endeavor is to experience Chim, and the two concepts are closely related. The song rewriting is the process of rewriting reality by the tonal manipulation, which happened with the case of the Dwemer when Lord Kagranak tried to activate the Numidium and ended up wiping out his race. The Mantelling is the way of the dead, which is to follow the steps of a certain Ada to the point of completely mimicking the Ada and becoming him, her. The same way Talos mantled Lorcan by leading his armies to fight the elves, and how the hero of Kvatch mantled Sheogorath. The Chim is one of the ultimate goals of apotheosis, and by its literal meaning is royalty. It is a state of being which allows for escaping from all known laws and limitations and reaching some sort of realization about the nature of the universe and one's place in it, leading to a simultaneous comprehension of the full scope of existence as well as one's own individuality. The scarab that transforms into the new man is an obscure term, but the new man means a new dreamer may mean the possibility of a birth of a new world altogether through ascending beyond the Godhead and becoming an amaranth. These were the secrets that were opened up to John through his 10 minutes experience a state of divinity. So which way did John use to reach that state? John's inner self was in a state of conflict about it. He is an avid fan of the Psijic Endeavor and his meditation is being refined based on the ancient texts he found about the Endeavor, and that's how he absorbed the powers of the Heartstones. He also used the tonal artifacts, which are the tools of Kagranak, to manipulate the energy and absorb it. He never reached the Chim and kept himself away from the tower, not even willing to check it out ever again. By that, he could conclude relying only on one way is not enough to reach the true level of an immortal aided. Well, at least I've done put my all to it. John smiled as he looked at the place around him with content feeling. This island he was in is supposed to be some snowy place in the Sea of Ghosts, but for some reason, it was now some sort of summer rainforest jungle. John loved the atmosphere which seemed to be giving him life and recharging his energy just by being in this beautiful place. He put his hand on a tree and branch lowered itself for John to hang on it and go up the level of the trees. The view from above was to a large landscape of an island covered with all sorts of tropical greenery and beaches of white sand and crystal blue waters. All of that was veiled by a cloud of mist isolating the tropical island and its beach from the cold outside of the Sea of Ghosts. This was John's domain, which he used up all the excessive divine orbic power he had to create. The power to shape the world. In the center of the island, there was a clearing of a large patch of green land surrounding a single pavilion in the center of a lake. The pavilion was made wooden pillars and a circular stone roof that seemed a bit stylish for the crude Nordic architecture, as in truth, John shamelessly used the elven architecture with this pavilion, which would suit the summer atmosphere in the area. He smiled with pride at his work and jumped down the tree. The sudden noise made the three sleeping beauties wake up. John simply walked to them and picked Jelliner up in his arms. "What's up, princess?" "What's up? My body is barely keeping up with you." She surrendered herself to him as they engrossed themselves in a kiss. "Hey, kiss me too." "And me too." Ela and Alina jumped on John to join the fray. He laughed because of their action and held them all with his hand. "Last night didn't put the three of you down? Seems like you three weren't wasting time on training while I was gone." The four kept playing and having fun until they reached the clearing where the pavilion stood. John carried both Ela and Jelliner as he walked on water by magic, and Alina followed him with the same spell until they reached the pavilion. "There is a mass of work waiting for us in Winterhold. You sure left them with one mess on their own," Alina said as they reached the pavilion. John put down the girls and let out a sigh. "I just don't want to go to Winterhold any time soon. Wolfer and the boys can deal with the aftermath on their own," John said. "There is no leeway out of this one. You are the boss and there are things only you can do," Ela said. "Don't forget that you almost let the King Torrig and Jarl Ulfric share a room." Jelliner pointed out something really weird. John looked away immediately. "And how in the blazes should I deal with two VIP coming to Winterhold at the same time without further notice? We only have one VIP guest house, so they've got to share." "Kind's mercy. Let's go home." Alina swore and placed her hand on a central pedestal on the pavilion. The space behind the pedestal twisted, and the space opened up a portal leading to Winterhold. Winterhold and Sarthel were calmer than what was anticipated. Crowded by the sudden arrival of many moonblades and firemans, the cities were even more cramped up with the unforeseen reinforcements from Windhelm and Solitude. Busy with licking their own wounds, the Dare troopers had a hard time putting down brawls between the soldiers of Windhelm and Solitude nearly around every corner. One can imagine how the political scene was from just the state of the common soldiers. In Winterhold below John's manor, the space twisted and a portal opened with four figures walking out of it. "It is cold here. I really feel so damn tired every time it is cold like this," John complained. "And you call yourself a Nord?" Ela said. "I just function much better in a warmer climate." "I guess we all can agree to that," Jelliner said. "I like that thought, keep it up." John rubbed her hair jokingly. The four walked out of the basement to the first floor of the manor to meet many anxious faces, looking at John all at once. "What's wrong?" John asked. These people were mostly the employees of the company. "Boss, here you are at long last, the place is a hot mess," Sev the secretary said. "Oh, good, I hope your workload is not overpiling." "It is, boss, and you have too many requests for appointments. The only way to solve them is to put appointments within other appointments within more appointments. Now that's scary." John started thinking, but no idea came to mind. "Fine, I'll deal with them all. Who's on top of the list?" "The High King, damn, never thought I would ever say that." "Focus, Sev." "Yes, boss. The High King and his men, Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak, Jarl Career, Miss Vittoria Vici, the Imperial commander from Fort Castav, and a wizard from the Imperial Synod. There are also many social visits. Be a good girl and put it all in one meeting," John said. "Excuse me. Just tell Jarl Career to make one big meeting. I am expecting to have one big mess. Also, the social visits are only family, so leave it to the night and make the boys and girls clean the place here and kick some family party. I want to drink and pass out with everyone tonight." "Yes, boss." Sev became gloomy as she realized the amount of work waiting for her. "Good luck, Sev. You'll need it," Ela said as she went away. "You are the secret paperwork wife, Sev. No one will ever replace you," Jelliner said and disappeared. I approve and recognize your efforts, Sev. Alina said haughty and went inside. Well, that was mean. John patted the back of the crying Sev. In the longhouse of Jarl Career, many political figures gathered around the long fireplace. Jarl Career accepted John's request to invite every one of those figures to his place. John was the latest to arrive, accompanied by Tormund Firemane, Sigurd Moonblade and Alina. The room became silent as everyone sat their eyes on John. He was wearing his regular mage that gave off his official rank as an expert mage. He wasn't carrying any sword or wearing any armor, but the power of John Dare was well recognized among everyone in this room. The mages around the room were the first to sense it, as well as the experienced warriors like Jarl Ulfric. John wasn't the same as he was yesterday. Not sure how they should think. John from the day of the battle was a powerful demigod, but this young man is not that tyrant of yesterday. Surely his aura carried a strong pressure of tyranny that was actually so strong compared to anyone else in the room, but that was not what they expected. Those with knowledge could tell it right away. The power of yesterday was unnatural and temporary, and judging by John's look, he is in a very good state. Maybe the godly power was temporary, but with the tools of Kagrenak, which are known to be in John's possession by now, John may be able to switch that godly mode back on again, which is not too far from the truth. It is rumored that when Almalexia fell from divinity by losing her demigod powers, she went mad. Can John Hild Firemane actually be able to ignore this effect? A mage asked another in the corner. Don't ask me. There is more we don't know here, but the situation is much better like this. We can pressure those Nords now. The two mages were from Cyrodiil and traveled a long distance in one night after an emergency transmission came from the Imperial Embassy in Skyrim. This was how fast the response of the Empire to the emergence of a demigod is. Ulfric Stormcloak was not far from the two mages, and he glared at them with a killing intent, causing them to look back at him with hostility. He walked towards them, and passed from between them, showing his dominance over weasels of their kind. As he passed them, he walked straight to John. Here he is, Winterhold's hero. It is good to finally meet you in person once again. Ulfric stood in front of John and offered a handshake. John smiled and shook Ulfric's hand. Likewise, Jarl Ulfric. Despite Ulfric distancing himself from John on a personal scale and John calling Ulfric as Big Bad Ulfric, the two seemed to have a great deal of respect to one another as well as plans for each other. High King Torygg saw the scene from a distance and narrowed his eyes. Both men are heroic and domineering, making him feel like the fool on the throne. Yet he knew better. There are the ones who would evade the storm and ones who would sail through it. Torygg would evade, Ulfric would sail through, but John, it is time for John to announce his stance today. This meeting was the most important meeting before the future event. It is time for John Dare answer many things and to take a side. Chapter 397 Political Drama 1 Judgement. All seated, all offered drinks, all looked at each other weighting gains and losses. John was at the center of all, seated closest to the High King on the right row of seat. The king, of course, sat on the throne of the Jarl, and the outsider Imperials were seated on the left row of seats according to protocol. Jarl Career chose to stand beside the High King to answer all questions regarding the hold. Second Thane Alina was seated beside First Thane John Hild. Following her were the two great patriarchs, Tormund Firemane and Sigurd Moonblade. Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak remained at the other side of the hall as an outsider, standing in the shadow of a corner eyeing everything. He may grumble whenever he sees Torygg, but he wasn't looking to anyone other than John with complete focus and interest, giving John a series of goosebumps every now and then. John and Alina were like the most brilliant pair. John, who healed himself right away after gaining divine powers, was now back to his previous self, but his hair has grown a lot, reaching his back. He didn't even bother with it, as he gave it a style of Nordic braids and was done with it. His only regret was not growing a glorious beard to complete the look. Alina, on the other hand, was radiating in her classy dresses and noble aura, capturing the eyes of the Imperials, who were in a dilemma between Alina's radiance and John's glares. First and foremost, thank you all for attending the meeting today. The past few days were hard on everyone here, so I hope most of you have taken your rest for a long meeting," King Torg said. Everyone else smiled calmly and nodded. "Before we start, I think we have some high-value prisoners we need to deal with. Thane Johnhild, I think these people are your prisoners to deal with. Can you please take things from here?" "Yes, Your Grace." John stood up and turned to his housecarl, Trudvar. "Bring them in." Trudvar led some hold guards to the outside of the Great Hall and returned a minute later with 9 men and women. They looked dignified but a bit broken. They were the 9 leaders of the 9 clans forming the Dragon Hunt Alliance. "I presume that you lot have picked a speaker for yourselves?" John said. "Yes, Thane Johnhild. I will be the speaker." The one who replied was Orga Stormfist. Undoubtedly, she is the most glib-tongued person among the lot. "And you are?" High King Torg asked. "Matriarch of the Stormfist clan, Orga Stormfist. Also known as the leader of the Stormfist Brigade, Orga the Younger." "I feel like I heard some of those names before," John wondered. Orga Stormfist is a legendary leader who founded the Stormfist clan thousands of years ago. The clan fell from glory nearly 950 years ago when they sided with Fildgor Strongprince, brother to Joran the Skald King, and formed the Stormfist Brigade to launch a civil war over the rule of Eastern Skyrim, Alina said. "Oh, I see." John nodded and turned around. "So, Orga Stormfist, you are a well-known mercenary, according to my buddy Brom of Johanna. What exactly brought you down with the others to this so-called Dragon Hunt Alliance? Also, who came up with the name?" "The reason for the alliance was the subjugation of an enemy clan gaining too much power. 17 years ago, 11 clans have gathered up for the same purpose and broke their alliance thinking they have fulfilled their goals. 2 weeks ago, messengers arrived at each clan with the news of the survival of Johnhild Firemane, who is now known as John Dare, Thane of Winterhold. With the demise of 2 of the 11 clans, the Bloodsails and the Blackbone, the rest of the 9 decided to face the threat in one swoop disguised as a bandit raid. And the Dragon Hunt Alliance was just a name brought by some drunken soldiers when Thane Johnhild was called the Young Dragon of Winterhold by Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak." "Oh, I am so flattered." John's expressions turned bright right away. The people were in loss of words how this guy kept acting childishly. "So, you said there were messengers arriving from some sort of source. Who exactly were they?" John asked. This question was really scary. Some of the Imperial diplomats were on their toes once John asked such a question. John's eyes scanned them one after the other as he could tell that some of them were surely political allies with the Thalmor. The letters came from an anonymous source, but the elders of the clans could trace them back to Clan Fokihar, one of the darkest clans of Skyrim. Fokihar? Some Nords shivered for the word, and clearly, the High King and his men were well aware of the name. "Your Grace, can we please get an elaboration of who are those Fokihar folk?" "The Imperial Legate of Fort Castav, Sulla Tribatius. As you have heard, they are the darkest of the Nord clans, and they a true hidden clan. One that has severed contacts with the world hundreds of years ago, but they are very infamous and vile. They are vampires," Fok Firebeard said. "Then why the vigilance of Stender are not taking action against them?" the Legate asked. "What part of the true hidden clan don't you understand?" Fox said with annoyance. "Don't give me that crap. All of your clans are called hidden clans, and a bunch of them are in front of us here. The clans call themselves hidden because they do not follow the doctrine of the Empire. Some worship the ancient Nordic pantheon, some worship the Nordic pantheon, and some worship the Daedra, and that's why they stay hidden from Imperial cult. The ones who worship the Daedra are considered enemies to the rest of the world, and that includes the other clans of Nords, while ours keep contact with the world. Alina explained with a level-headed tone. So those Fokihars can't be found? Just like that? The last known appearance of them was recorded in the Reach area about 10 days ago when they clashed with the Firemans and kidnapped Mr. John Hild Firemane over here. He is the last known man who came into contact with them. Suddenly, one of the Imperial mages spoke up. John narrowed his eyes. As he thought, a superpower like the Empire is not to be underestimated, and they have eyes on everything. True, John casually replied. Then you could have said something from a while ago. The Imperial legate stood up to face John with a frown. Come on, Sulla. We can take this outside after this meeting is over. John replied to the Imperial legate mockingly. John Dare, this is official business, so you better not obstruct us. Interesting. You lot have a lot of balls as it seems. Wanna try? Don't tempt me, Imperial. I may not be as powerful as I was yesterday, but I am still John Dare. You and I go way back, so you better keep it zip. John and Sulla Trebatius, the legate of Fort Castav, were at odds with each other for a very long time, ever since the founding of the Dare Dragon Company. Legate Sulla tried too many times to extort money from John, but the latter was as shrewd as a Breton and as calculative as Imperials. The provisions of Fort Castav tribute on Winterhold haven't increased a single grain of salt ever since the days before John's arrival to Winterhold. Moreover, John has completely cut Sulla's feet from Winterhold and stopped many unauthorized excavations Sulla ordered around the hold. John was actually very aware of Sulla's identity as a character from the game. By 4E201, this man will desert from the Legion and become an explorer reaching very deep in the Dwemer ruins of Alftand, only at the doorsteps of the legendary city of Blackreach. Now, as John was aware of Sulla's intentions, he wouldn't let him out of his post to stuck his nose where it doesn't belong. This was why Winterhold and the Imperial Legion of Fort Castav were always at odds. This isn't over, John Dare. It is. You just don't realize it yet. John was truly amused by the amount of the enemies he makes wherever he goes. The curse of the protagonist is truly marvelous. Thane John Hild, you were the last to come across those vampires. Some of the righteous clans like the Skyguard clan and the Goldfair clan has a deep grudge with the Fokihar clan. Do you have anything that can help us with the case of the Fokihar clan? High King Torrig smoothen the atmosphere. Well, I was imprisoned by the Fokihar clan for quite some time. Nothing I'd wish to relive ever again. If you want to know the location of their castle, then I'd say it is really hard to tell, but as soon as I escaped their fort after employing their inner political strife to my favor, I found myself in a Daedric realm called Called Harbor. By the 8. Called Harbor? It can't be. Gods, this is serious. Everyone in the room reacted with a pale face. Of course, this was no small matter. How in oblivion did you escape that? Sybil Stentor asked. As most of you know about the damned prophecy that links me to 3 Elder Scroll, the head of the Fokihar clan, known as Lord Harkon, wanted to find those Elder Scrolls. I led them in a few mazes to recover an Elder Scroll and, surprisingly, the tools of Kagranak. It was then when I devised a plan by breaking free from their spells and forcing them to all travel to Called Harbor. I then used the device they used to travel between the realms to come home and sabotage it from this side, where I found myself somewhere in the Sea of Ghosts, and then used some magic to contact my adoptive mother, Archwizard Nurina Aran, to pick me up. John made up some truths and had to hide up some other fact. The secrets he let out were nothing compared to his soul fragmental artifact, Pride, which he used to escape. Wait, hold up. You sabotaged an artifact that can travel between the world and escaped a vampire den just like that? An Imperial mage jumped up, not buying any part of the story. Yes, I also came across a Daedric Titan and struck a deal with him to fight for me. I think your report should contain that. Daedric Titans are the most dangerous kind of Daedric creatures ever recorded as far as you Imperials know, right? Yes, right. The Daedric Titan. There was that. The mage realized he needed to link more dots in this accident. To sum things up, the Fokihar clan comes from Oblivion, and they have the ability to travel through realms, which makes sense why no one found them for so many years. Any more questions? None for now. High King Torrig paused the hearing about John's adventures and nodded for John to continue. Now as we got the Fokihar thing out of the way, Orga Stormfist, I promised safe passage for the men of the clans and I delivered. You heads of the clans also delivered yourselves without any trickery, so I respect that. Another question, the force of high elves that aided you, what was their identity? John's question this time was right in the heart of the problem. He could notice the Imperials taking deep breaths, ready to stop any political drama from happening. Orga Stormfist was having a hard time here, but she noticed Alina looking at her. From the way her mouth moved, Alina was saying something to Orga which the latter understood but was about to break into laughter. Orga cleared her throat and spoke loudly. The high elves who aided us were a group of dark mages that we hired. I see, so we can use the heads of those elves to decorate the walls of Sarthal. John concluded right away. The move was completely unexpected to the Imperial mages. They all panicked in an instant. Their main goal as diplomats dispatched by the Empire is to wrap up the mess and suppress any political uprising that may lead to any unwanted conflict. The Empire had many preparations for the Thalmor, but a conflict of that kind may cause big trouble. They came to think that John will accuse the Thalmor of being the ones who attacked him and cause a mess, but the move that John made was to provoke the Thalmor to the extreme. The diplomats were prepared to face the former anticipation by saying that John or the clan had no physical proof that the Thalmor were involved in this, yet John knew better. Law and politics was his oldest area of expertise, and he was no stranger to playing dirty. If John desecrated the corpses of the elven archwizards, it wouldn't be just a political drama, it will be a full-on tomato war. Their response should either be admitted that those elves are Thalmor, which means that the Empire will be in open conflict with the Dominion for doing a large-scale military operation without permission on its soil, or keep silent and watch the Aldmeri Dominion go into a full-on political conflict with the Imperials, acquiring new gains. John looked at the Imperial with disgusted eyes. How on Nirn can they just accept to be the ones cleaning after their enemy's mess, and even go in cahoots with them? The Empire was really rotten to the core. Such an entity as the Empire should be cleansed from top to bottom, but John had nothing to do with that right now anyway. John just looked at Orga and spoke his judgment. Well, in the end, we don't have much to do with the elves. As the aggressors, I have every right to obliterate you lot, but I chose mercy for a very good reason. You fuckers are Nords, and killing you weakens Skyrim. The High King himself has traveled many miles across the kingdom to stop the pointless bloodshed. You fuckers are the core power of Skyrim. Whenever there is war, you are the first to answer under the banner of His Grace the High King. Killing you is killing His Grace's soldiers. See where I am going there? If you lot do not have a value to Skyrim, I would have killed you off the face of Nirn. John's lecturing tone was directly targeting the people's cores. He was not angry or anything, but he wanted to make his point clear. You lot are my prisoners until each of your clans bail you out with 10,000 gold septims each, or what is its worth. Managing you will be done by Thane Alina Moonblade. John sat the ransom for 10,000 gold septims. By no means that was something looked down on. John's reasoning was clear. The number of the Dare troopers who died in the battle is going to cost the company a lot, and the day is filled with funerals to the fallen troopers. John himself is going to attend a sermon for the fallen heroes in the Temple of Kine. The leaders of the clans couldn't help but nod their heads in bitterness and see themselves out to be led to their prisons once again. Now that we got this out of the way, I guess all that is left is decorating the walls with the heads of those rogue Altmare wizards, John said to provoke the Imperials. Wait! A voice called for John. I have a say in that, Thane of Winterhold. Everyone looked at the speaker for their eyes to almost drop out of their socket. On the door leading to the great hall of Jarl Career's longhouse, 3 high elves stood. A high elf in an Imperial Legion armor and another in a barred robe. The two distanced themselves from the third, which was the one who just called for John. A female high elf in an expensive-looking Thalmor robe. It was none other than First Ambassador Elenwen. Chapter 398 Political Drama 2. A Million Gold Septims. Ambassador Elenwen. What a twisted surprise. I feel like ages since we saw each other last time. Oh! Wait a minute. This is the first time we see each other. John saw Elenwen and acted surprised. Elenwen narrowed her eyes for a second, then decided to ignore John seeing him in a good mood and trash-talking everyone. She walked forward inside the longhouse's great hall, but her eyes landed on Ulfric Stormcloak in the corner. Her expressions betrayed her, and she was simply enraged seeing Ulfric's face. After all, this is the killer of her master. Ulfric couldn't help but to sneer. Through the years, he could finally face Elenwen, the very same Thalmor officer that interrogated him while he was young, and can now look down on her the same way she always looked down on him. In the end, Elenwen had to swallow the bitter pill and walk further into the hall. No one could miss her annoyed expressions after that. Your Grace, it has come to our attention that some natives of Alinar were among the force that tried to pillage the hold of Winterhold. We would like to be handed over the bodies of our brethren for a proper burial. I do not understand. The Altmare that attacked Sarthal were a band of marauders, as far as our investigation is concerned. Would every Dominion ambassador go around each country gathering the corpses of every Altmare lowlife on roadsides? High King Torrig didn't take Elenwen's demanding tone well. Your Grace, this is a Dominion affair and we advise. Pick your words carefully, elf. Falk Firebeard was not comfortable with Elenwen too. Elenwen looked between the king and his people, then looked at John Dare, who was standing not far from her with a funny expression. The dead Altmare bandits are under the jurisdiction of Winterhold. High King Torrig dismissed the matter with a wave of his hands. Elenwen looked to the man standing beside the High King. Jarl Career. The matter is under the management of Thane John Hild. Career brushed it off. Elenwen looked with annoyed eyes towards John, who smiled widely and opened his hands. How can I help you? John said. The bodies of the dead countrymen of mine. The Aldmeri Dominion would like to. I know, no need to repeat yourself, John said, then sat back. But you know, taking them requires a ransom. I am sure we all on the same page. Say it. Elenwen wanted to cut to the chase. 2,000 fallen foot soldiers and 9 archwizards, if we summed it up, but still, god damn. You high elves surely have a lot of rouge archwizards for them to gang up so far from Alinar and cause a mess. The Isles of Somerset must be one hectic place at this rate. John deviated from the subject. The ransom. 100 golden septims for each foot soldier, 80,000 golden septims for each archwizard. The people in the room all sucked a breath of cold air. John was extorting the Thalmor for almost 1,000,000 golden spetims. John Dare, you are biting more than what you can chew, Elenwen said. Meaning? The Thalmor government doesn't like to be pushed around, and there surely will be retaliation. You are not the same John Dare from the other day. We know about your puny attempt to reach a state of divinity was merely all your best effort, and we will admit that it was admirable, but you put a large target on your back and your city, Thane John Hild. There is no getting away from that. Even the Empire won't extend a hand of help to you. Elenwen's tone was full of threats. Oh, really? John tilted his head. See for yourself? Elenwen walked away from her position to let John have a look at the Imperial envoys that were sitting on the other side. Surely they were not comfortable with Elenwen's claims and raised a fuss before the High King shuts them up. Ambassador, that's one thick nerve you have that let you threaten my retainers in front of me. I can call this negotiation off if I want. Torg returned a threat to Elenwen. She calmly nodded and looked at John. He stood up and walked to her till their shoulders met. A high elf like her was indeed tall, but John was taller. Let me teach you a lesson in capitalism. What doesn't kill you still requires you to pay up, so pay up. Winterhold does not negotiate with losers. Huh. You sure want to take it that way? Elenwen asked. Sigh. I fucking hate negotiations. Fine. I'll entertain you. John said, then turned to her. Do you have one of those investigation dossiers on me? You know, the ones you keep in your torture chamber? Elenwen was taken aback. I don't know what you are talking about. Don't deny it. Every Thalmor has a torture chamber. Point is, you surely have a dossier about me, so you should know my life story very well. I'll summarize it for those who don't know it. One day I was born, then every Thalmor tried to kill me. That brings us up to date. John kept a wry smile on his face, then looked at Elenwen. Do you really think any of your threats scare me? John summarized his biography in 18 words, making a lot of sense to whoever heard them. What kind of threat should scare him if the Thalmor are already out for his head? I see, suit yourself. 1,000,000 golden septims it is, Thane John Hild. Elenwen turned around and was about to leave, yet something intrigued her, and she stopped. She then pointed to an empty seat beside the Imperials and turned to the High King. May I? The ones around the room felt not comfortable. Why would she want to stay after costing herself 1,000,000 gold septims? Ulfric wanted to lash out, but John was smiling vividly. Ulfric kept gazing between John and Elenwen and noticed the other two high elves which arrived with Elenwen. Something was wrong and things seemed to be accelerating to a new drama. Your Grace, it is so good to see you here in this frozen beautiful lands on the north. One of the two high elves walked forward. He was the one wearing a bard robe. Viarmo, it is good seeing you here too. Let me guess, this is not a social visit. Torg greeted Viarmo back. Viarmo. Ulfric and the others were alert to the name. This man is known as someone with deep pockets everywhere, and his ability to manipulate politics is scary due to his secret network of spies. The Court of Solitude always kept him close by, but he served no master. For such a snake to appear in Winterhold. A social visit? Indeed it is. What can a bard like me do if not socializing and earning his money where fine nobles and merchants stay? I was also here to guide my good friend here. Your Grace, I present to you my kinsman, Legate Facendel. The other high elf walked forward and greeted High King Torg with the salute of the Imperial Legion. This high elf was donned in a legionnaire armor and didn't show any hint of disdain towards Nords, just like the Viarmo. The only difference is that Viarmo is a slimy man, while that Legate Facendel seemed like a straightforward person. Elenwen was eyeing the two up and down until she heard the name Facendel, and her expressions sunken. Legate Facendel? Indeed. The famous Altmare Legate, I heard so much about you. High King Torg seemed to be familiar with the name too. Even John was familiar with Legate Facendel, but his knowledge is from the game. Legate Facendel may be an Altmare, but his hatred for the Thalmor is top-notch, someone John was so looking forward to meet. It's an honor, Your Grace. So, what brings you to Winterhold's court today? Torg asked. Legion business with the Jarl and the Thanes, Your Grace. I am really sorry to interrupt the meeting like that. It's okay, we are about to take some rest anyway. Alright, folk. 20 minutes will be enough to gulp on some warm mead? Everyone stood up, and as Torg did, and the servants of the Jarl started serving mead and food. John ran to a corner with Alina and clutched on a few bottles for themselves. Thane John Hild. Jarl Ulfric. A word, please. I'll be with my father. Alina took off. John was crying as soon as Alina left him alone with Ulfric. Yes, Jarl Ulfric. How can I help you? John said with a tired face. He was ignoring Ulfric and his messengers for a couple of years now, and they finally had to meet one-to-one. John was completely not looking forward to this. Actually, it is the other way around. How can I help you, Thane Johnhild? Ulfric said with a warm smile. Sorry? John was genuinely taken aback. How can I help you? I wish to be of help. Yes, my mind is still processing. What exactly do you want to help me with? With this. With what you are doing. Oh. What exactly is that? I am sorry, I was a bit excited. Ulfric cleared his voice to speak in a lower tone. Let me fight for you. John took a step back, then looked at the bottle in his hand. Damn, this stuff is good. I think you heard right, also, you haven't taken a sip yet. Really? John tried to find some sense in reality. Okay, let's do this one more time, but get less excited, please. Speak Nordic. You heard me damn right, Thane Johnhild. I want to fight for you. I saw something bigger than myself yesterday, and I realized many things. I kept thinking last night, and I came to enlightenment. Everything we fought for, everything I tried to accomplish all those many years led me to short-term gains and long-term losses. Whenever I try to win the Thalmor, they always find ways to turn everything against me. But with you, they are on losing streaks one after the other. You can accomplish things right way better than me. Please, let me join you as there is still time. You will be the answer to everything. Ulfric's request was straight and right from the heart, but the more he talked the more John's face hardened and his reply just like a stone falling on water. No. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.